Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back once again to the Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022 Europe Tournament. My name is Ben, also known as Zisrel of Yellow Card Vanguard, and I'm joined today by JJ, also known as Mr. Rogers, and Eric, also known as Mr. Timely of Vanguard Insider. Gentlemen, after a long, grueling day of Swiss yesterday, we are finally here to the top 8, the final cut. There's quite a few interesting decks and a few well-known players here. I think there's a lot to get on. Unless you guys have anything you want to say, I think we were good to get straight into it.
I think the matches are going to talk for themselves, so I just want to jump in as fast as possible.
Yep, of course.
Vanguard. I just want to see some Vanguard. Let's go.
Absolutely. As much as I agree with you guys, we do have a little bit of housekeeping to do. So JJ, why don't you walk us through the format of what we've been going through this weekend and what we have left to do today?
All right. So for day one, most of you guys have noted, it's been a best of one 30-minute round of Swiss. Now that we are in the top 8, that's going to kind of change a little bit on day 2, which will be 35-minute single elimination best of one.
Yeah, this time change has been such a great improvement. Like, having judged the Springfest season that just passed, this has been like the number 2 thing I've been requesting Bushiroad change. So I'm glad to see that they're listening to the player feedback. But moving on, we have some of the formats for the rest of this weekend. So as I mentioned, this weekend has been the premium tournament, but we still have 3 more weeks of Bushiroad Rumble Online goodness for you in the coming few weeks. So as you see, this weekend has been premium format, 23rd, 24th of July. Next week, we have the V format event, which is going to be on the 30th and 31st of July. So if you perhaps are not a fan of the Overtrigger, then maybe next week's tournament will be a lot more in line for you. And then, of course, we do have the standard format event in August after a 2-week break, just so that the players and the judges can sort of recharge a little bit and regain their energy. So standard is, I think, going to be the most exciting format. I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, last but not least, we have Weiss Schwarz the week after, rounding it all off on the 20th and the 21st of August. So I will be back here again with some other commentators. I'm afraid JJ and Eric will not be joining us, but if you're interested in Weiss Schwarz, do tune in for that as well. And before we jump into the games and into the top 8 bracket, Eric, why don't you run us through once more and remind everyone what the players are playing for in this top cut?
And what a prizes our players are playing for, because we got some amazing promo cards as well as boxes to fight for. As we see here, the 4th place player is gonna get a nice certificate to basically have bragging rights to all their friends, family members, and every other person around them. But if we move up to the 3rd place, we see that they also are gaining a promo from the new Origarum Progenitor Stride, but also they get a box of the upcoming Klein Collection set. And then moving up to the 2nd place, they get 2 copies of the promo, which is very nice. And moving up to the 1st place, they get everything that we talked about, but a full playset of the new Victory promo card. So very nice prizes for our contestants to fight for. But to really see who is going to win these prizes, let's take a look at the brackets to see what matches are awaiting us in the next coming hours.
Yep, so everyone, you can see here, this is your top 8 final cuts. So I'm going to quickly go over the player names and what they're playing, just so you can know. So we've got WCC Suo, who actually won AO like just a few hours ago. He came 1st place, so maybe he's looking to do a 2-peat, get the back-to-back victory. But yeah, Stephen Lee is playing Highlander, and he's up against Dave Muzrax Vect, one of our Europe boys playing Mystery Flare Turbo. I'm sure we're excited to see that coming soon. We've got Raptors Levin, also known as Russell, one of the top UK players playing Vanquisher. He's going to be playing against KG Spixtis, who's playing No Life King Barrow. Then on the other end of the bracket, we have Aya playing Dungaree versus Kitten Pants, also on Vanquisher. And finally, in the top 8, and also the game that we're going to show for you on stream, we've got Nico playing Shiroyuki versus Pisa playing Shield Fisher Machining. It's going to be an exciting match, but I think before we jump into that, let's take a quick look at the top 8 deck list, starting with Stephen Lee's Highlander deck. So, I mean, looking like this is an impressive list to look at. It's Highlander, there's not that much to say, but Highlander is Highlander, right? It's just a good deck. It has so much toolboxing thanks to the Kutere. It has an insane amount of plussing because of Aqua and Akari, just bouncing all your pieces. You've got the Pearl Sisters for pressure. You've got everything in this deck either bounces, pluses, compresses, or gives power. So it's just a super solid deck, and it does take a lot of skill to play. You need to know exactly what card you need to search for at any given time. But the fact that he won AO with it, I think just speaks volumes to how good he is as a player on this deck.
That's right. I think one of the things that I did notice here is that the fact that he's playing Cray Elemental Rollock, he's not playing that. He's playing Cornell instead of it because he values the on-attack pressures of his Pearl Sisters against the retirement matchups. So it's a good nod that he did into the Vanquisher matchups or any form of Narukami for that matter. I really like that addition to his deck.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's interesting because not every Highlander list we see is playing like reindeers, or maybe they're only playing like one or two of like some other tech card. So the fact that there is some difference between like Highlander lists, I think is always interesting to see. But we're not going to spend too long on this because if we talked about every individual card in Highlander, we'd be here for half an hour. Exactly. So let's just move on to his G-Zone. And of course, we see here he's playing 4 copies of the new Heltrauder. This has been touted as one of, if not the best stride in P-Clan Collection. And I think it just really says a lot that, even if it might not be Prism with its insane vert on attack pressure, but the fact that you can still abuse like your grade 4 effects is still really, really strong for Bermuda in general. So, he's just playing. The deck no longer has to rely on things like the Alk Stride or the Shandy Stride. It can now just focus entirely on Heltrauder to get multiple Vanguard attacks reliably, and yeah, it just goes from there. It's just a lot of really powerful cards. So moving on, we then have Dave Muzrax's MFD Turbo list. This is, I think, very much the same list that he played in BSF London a few weeks ago. And so for those of you who don't understand, I'm not gonna try and advertise myself too much, but I did make a video about this combo a year ago about how you can get 2 extra turns with the Mystery Flare combo, meaning that he takes his turn and then takes 2 more turns after that, which, let's be honest, is basically game winning because it's at least 9 attacks. It's pretty insane. But yeah, so when the combo was first discovered, people was like, oh, this is a meme deck, it's a high roll deck, but with a little bit of testing, with a few of the new cards, I think Dave and his Gear Chronicle expertise has managed to optimize the combo and the pieces and make this combo consistent. I mean, Eric, you're the Gear Chronicle expert here. What do you make of this?
I mean, this is probably the most streamlined version of the deck because with the latest editions of not only V-Premium, but also more importantly Standard, it basically gave the deck the pieces need. Because I want to take your attention to the 3rd card on the left, as that Standard card was overlooked by Dark States players just in general. But for Gear Chronicle, for this list, it's the magic bullet. Because that card allows you to set up your Mystery Flare in your soul to achieve the turbo aspect of Turbo Mystery Flare. Because now you can essentially get full combo on potentially your first grade 3 right turn. If the cards are right. And if we're gonna see this game on stream, that's when we're gonna go in depth on all the plays, because I can stay here for hours and hours, and I just want to go into the actions as fast as possible. And I think players are going to see much more about this deck if we're going to see it live in action.
Yeah, for sure. So let's move on to Dave's G-Zone. So we can see here he's also playing the new P-Clan Collection Stride, the Schlishma. I think it's a pretty solid card. His main win con, from what I understand, is actually still the Ragnar Clock down in the corner there. But again, the fact that Gear Chronicle just has access to a bunch of generic, decent strides all around. It doesn't have to rely entirely on Chronojet pieces, next stage, etc., etc. He has that flexibility, and I think that's part of, even if his double Mystery Flare combo doesn't get there, he still has this cool backup option.
Yeah, that's the nice part about the latest edition of the P-Clan collection in the past couple of years, is that we finally went away from the specific Chronojet support and we start to get slowly pieces that are very generic. We saw with History Build, Croc Rock Dragon, and now with Slishma, and also the new G-Guards, and that really gave Gear Chronicle a flexible generic G-Zone that we see here in action that allows us to play all types of archetypes that don't need to rely on Chronojet anymore. So the sky's the limit here, and yeah, this is a very streamlined G-Zone that I can definitely see taking games in all types of scenarios.
Yep, so moving on, we then have Raptor Slevin's Vanquisher list. So we saw this on stream yesterday. Again, like we mentioned, there's not a lot of flex room for Vanquisher. The deck is pretty straightforward. a lot of the pieces are critical to your combo in terms of either multi-attack or binding or so on and so forth. But as we mentioned, Narukami is just very strong because it has very powerful G-guards, it has very powerful strides in the form of Stunverse and Exterminate, and yeah, just like the ability to force your opponent to decide like, do I commit a board and attack back, or do I just have to try and defend against his onslaught, makes it really difficult to put up against. And it's just a really solid deck, I'm a big fan.
Likewise. One thing to point out, I guess above anything else, is just the Heal Guardians. He's just not running those. I think it's just a different choice that he took into a different matchup, I guess. He just wants to have a 20k shield for the early, and there's some narrow situations the extra 5k shield can come in handy.
Yeah, totally understandable. And you know, we see like in other builds of Narukami, like say Eradicator, you might even be running say grade 1 Nusku who can search for heals, but yeah, no, here he's just, I just like the 20k shield, you know, I'm not looking for grade, you know, I don't need the extra grade 3, I'm just gonna push and ride up and go for it. So moving on, you know, we saw the G-Zone just now, but let's take a quick look at it again. So again, you see here the P-Clan collection, Exterminate Dragon coming in. So the classic Narukami problem is that if you fill your board to play around Exterminate, you'll get Stunverse, and if you leave your board empty to play around Stunverse, you'll get Exterminated. And of course, the second biggest strength about Narukami is its disruptive G-Guards in the form of Bulwark and Impede. Interesting to note here that Raptors London is only playing 1 Impede, whereas we see a lot of Narukami lists playing 2, maybe even 3 Impedes. And I think especially in a matchup like Highlander, which is constantly going to have its board full, we'll see whether or not that impacts him later on. But then moving on to his opponent, he is up against KG Sphinxis, who is playing No Life King Baron Magnus. Now, we saw Notorious Et playing her version of this deck earlier yesterday, and we see that KG Sphinxis has a slightly different variation. So, you know, he's playing a few other cards, like he's playing, say, the Emblem Master instead of the Poison, less of the Poisonic Abductor. He's playing more of the Werewolf Ketzer as opposed to Killer Tail. But as you can see, both decks are just all about getting to as much soul as possible, riding to grade 3. We can see that this list has, this list has pretty much no GB cards. So KG Sphinxis is again looking to just ride grade 3 and just instantly win with like a 12 attack multi-combo with the Hope on Damp Pressure. It's just a super solid list, and if he's playing this similar to the way Notorious Ed is playing her list, I'm going to say let's take a look at his G-Zone, but his G-Zone probably doesn't matter because he's trying to win without it. Of course, Forfax is there, the new P-Clan collection card that lets you stride into it after your Vanguard attacks. So maybe he can go into NLK, into Baron Magnus, into Forfax if he has a little bit of extra resource that he doesn't mind throwing away. Just, bit of reach, bit of push there. But the majority of this is the G-Guard. He's running what? It looks like 7 G-Guards just because he wants that flexibility, he wants the variety, he wants to be able to say, I just want to be able to guard whatever at any given choice. Which is kind of exactly where you expect DI to be. Then, moving on to the next round of the bracket, we then have Aya versus Kitten Pants. So again, Aya is another player who we saw on stream yesterday playing Dungaree. And again, we keep saying, there are so many different builds possible for Narukami, and Dungaree is one of them. The fact that you can Stunverse down into the 17k triple drive 2-crit Vanguard is really, really solid. We see here that Aya is choosing to play the Heal Guardians. And we can see that's a bit more obvious because they're not playing Nusku, they're not searching for Eradicators as much. But it did work out for them in the Swiss round. They were able to just out-pressure their opponent, keep the board empty, play around all this sorts of disruption, and come out on top. I again want to mention again, like I mentioned yesterday, I particularly am a big fan of the Oban Gongsun combo for countercharge, for resources, and for bind. It kind of does everything you want to do in a Dungaree list and more, so I'm really happy to see that there. And let's quickly look at their G-Zone, but as we said, Narukami G-Zone, there's not a lot to say. We see the Exterminate, we see the Stunverse, we see the Disruptive G-Guards with 2 copies of Impede this time. Any of you guys have anything to say about this?
Overall, it just looks very good stuff, Narukami, and we've seen it in action before, and maybe we're gonna see it in action again, and expect a lot of binding and retiring and Dungaree doing Dungaree stuff, I guess, in this particular instance.
Yep, alright. So in that case, let's move on to the second Vanquisher list, which is their opponent, Kitten Pants. So we've just seen the Raptor Slevins list, and it's interesting to take a look at how this is different. So this Kitten Pants is choosing to play Demolition Dragons, which I really like. They're also choosing to play the promo Dragon Dancer Barker, which I'm also a big fan of, and instead are not choosing to play Phoenixes. but they're also playing Heal Guardians over the base grade 0 20k shield heal. So it's going to see how that's interesting, how that works out for them. Maybe that will give them a better edge in the mirror match as opposed to Raptor 11, who we saw lose the mirror in Top Cut. But let's also then take a look at their G-Zone, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be very similar to what we've seen so far. There we go. We see the stun versus, we see the exterminates, we see the G-Guards, we see the GB8, which I think Raptor 11 was not playing, and we see the VMAX, which again Raptor 11 was also not playing. And there's a few less tech options here, like, there's no Brahma G-Guard, there's no Progenitor Dragon, there's no Zeroth Dragon. But again, these are like the 1 in 10 game sort of cards. So I imagine it's not going to affect Kitten Pants to not have them that much. So finally, as what we were waiting for, we're on to the final stream game, deck reviews. So we're going to start off by looking at Nico's Shiryuki list. And this is a deck that has gone under the radar, even throughout Lost format, when it was still really good. But I think this is a very, very solid deck. It's got insane combo potential, and when played correctly, it will 0 to 6 your opponents. So for those of you who don't understand how the deck works, it revolves around the Grade 1 Rainy Madame and the Grade 2 Jokotsu Girl, whose effects say when an attack doesn't hit, they can potentially search for Shiryukis or add Shiryukis to hand from the drop zone. So what you do is that you rush your opponent in the early game with lots of pressure from these Jokotsu Girls and Rainy Madames. If they hit, your opponent takes damage, cool. If they don't hit, you get to search for and add Shiryukis to hand. And the way it works is that once you get to your stride turns, which we'll look at the G-Zone in a little bit, but you've got the 6 Flowers of Phantasm Shiryuki, the new Clan Collection one, whose effect is when your attack doesn't hit and you have a Shiryuki Vanguard, you can counter blast 1 to give your opponent's Vanguard minus 10k for the turn. So when you have multiple copies of these, which you can clone very easily, if your opponent is at 4 or 5 damage and the attack doesn't hit, they're going to like minus 20, minus 30k on their Vanguard, and you have multi-attacks because you're Murakumo, you're an Axel clan, and you can just insta-kill people out of nowhere. It's a really threatening deck, and I'm sure we'll get to explain the combo and the card effects more as we jump into the top 8. But like I said, let's take a look at Nico's G-Zone just so we can get into the games as fast as possible. So the two main cards to look at here are the Shibaraku Victor, which searches for it's just a deck search, it just adds cards to hand, really solid effect, and it's got a very powerful Shadow Stitch effect, which when your attack doesn't hit, it gives you an extra attack. So again, if your opponent's on 5 damage, they're having to face down a lot of resources to get that lethal in. Then we're moving on to finally Peter's deck list, which again we showed on stream yesterday in the Swiss Cut, and it's Shield Fisher Mega Colony. This is a really cool deck, I'm a big fan. Despite Order, Ruination and Book being restricted, he still found a way to make the Floodgate that is Gridora very, very powerful indeed. We've got the Machining Princess for multi-attack, we've got the Machining Armor Beetle and Mantis for high power, and we've got the Cybista for plussing. I think there's not a lot to say here other than this deck has been built to be a well-oiled machine, and it's got an 18k base Vanguard and a Shield Fisher to just sit behind a good defensive with. So we can move on to Peter's G-Zone, and I think I'm willing to say that there's really not that much to discuss here other than the 4 copies of Darkface Gridora, flipping over the Malignantis to use Malignantis to minus 10k opponent's Vanguard so that all those multi-attacks become even more threatening. JJ, I've been talking for a while now. Anything you want to say before we move into the games?
Bugs, good. Yes.
I didn't even have time to get a drink, but sure. Alright then, I guess if nothing else to do, let's jump straight into the games. Here we go. Top 8 is starting. We have Peter on the left and Nico on the right. I believe while they were setting up the pre-game, while we were doing the deck lists, Nico's on the left actually, and Peter's on the right. We'll get that stream fixed for you in just a second. But I believe Peter's going first and Nico's going second. So while we have to get the stream overlay fixed, Nico's going first. There you go, so he's riding the Shiryuki Searching Grade 1. So while he's resolving that effect, who do you guys think is favored in this matchup? Because this is not a matchup we see often.
I feel myself it's more Shiryuki favored. I don't know if you guys got a look at that, but Nico for turn ended up drawing the Drag Ritter Hardy, which is actually a very cool nod to taking on cards like Honolulu, for example, because it when it's placed, you choose one of your opponent's back row rear guards, and usually Honolulu's in the back row, and usually get rid of those cards. But you can also get rid of high-powered Moth, which seals off any of the aspects of counter charge that you need. So it's a really nice way of getting rid of like utility cards your opponent tends to put in the back row. It's really nice. I like it.
Yeah, for sure. I think I would agree with you that the matchup is largely Murakumo favored, because the Floodgate of Gridora really doesn't do much, because Shiryuki's trying to rewrite every turn to get the Soul Blast to minus 20k effect onto your opponent's Vanguard, right? And Shiryuki doesn't really superior call that much. The only thing that doesn't call from hand in that deck is the stand trigger that Nico's not playing, and the Shibaraku Victor that calls itself from the G-Zone, which is a nice extender, but he doesn't need it to win the game.
How do you feel about it, Eric?
In this particular instance, I have some experience against Shiryuki personally, and it depends on who's probably going to get the first strike. As Shiryuki, if he can set up and get their full combo, it's probably going to be very devastating for Peter to handle that. But as soon as the Shiryuki player is going to go first, it comes down if they're going to go do a grade 2 gaming here, and who's going to be favorite going out of the grade 2 gaming. So right now, it looks like Shiryuki is a bit favored, but I think it could go either way depending on the first couple of turns. And I think we're going to see that right here now that we're going to see immediately turn 2 play from Shiryuki, which is kind of aggressive here with 2 Yogatsu Girls on the field.
Yeah, so we saw, while we were talking about that, we saw the early crit in from Peter to putting Nico up to 2, which is quite good for Nico. You want all the counter blasts you can get in that deck. And then Peter then gets a defensive heal, which is not what he wants, because now both of these Jukotsu girls swing under his 18k Vanguard, which means Nico's going to get to resolve the on-whiff attack twice.
And getting those as utility, oh my gosh, it's a really good thing, because it allows you to take a look at the top 7, add any of the Shiryuki names, since they're both called Shiryuki in deck, and it's just nice. It's just really, really nice.
Yeah, plus the damage defense, the draw he took in damage the turn before he's going to be plussing a lot this turn. So we saw that the first Jukotsu girl whiffed, and he ended up soul charging one of his 6 flowers, which could be problematic for him in the long run, but I think he is able to return it from, if he soul blasts it, he can return it from his drop zone back into his deck, no problem. So I think the second one whiffs as well, soul charges again, which is still good. The deck does consume a lot of soul, so I wouldn't say no to some free soul charging, but again, in a matchup like this, I think he's trying to win the game on the first ride, and so he wants all the pieces he can find.
Alright, so Peter for turn draws, rides into Machine Mantis, Counter Blast once, gets plus 6k, and he gets to add himself a grade 3, which is the Heal Guardian.
That can be a bit risky here in the situation, because we already see another heal in a damage zone, so that means Peter's already 2 heals down, and we don't know what the rest of his hand is. It's nice for defensive option going forward that if Nico decides to go to Shiryuki on turn 3 and maybe go with minuses, this Heal Guardian could negate it to some extent. But if we go into later turns, once those Heal Guardians are offline, this could also be a bit of a downside by filtering your own deck of triggers.
That's true. I think it's in a situation where, since he's on low damage, I think he can take this kind of risk, possibly even saving it for a G-Guardian later. But I think right now, since he's going into grade 3 and he has like double Jukotsu Gold plus Shiryuki, he kind of needs this sort of defensive advantage as much as he possibly can get.
So let's see what is going... Ooh, the Cyber's are coming down, so we're probably going to see more plussing in this particular turn.
So even though you got the early crit against Nico here, as Peter, because of the threat of those Jukotsu girls, I'm considering rear into rear, Vanguard into rear here.
I agree. I hard agree with this.
Yeah, you want to shut down that advantage engine for Shiryuki as fast as possible, because not only are they either searchers and deck builders, but the soul is definitely a very viable resources for Shiryuki.
Yeah, so he Cybis to find himself a second armor beetle there, and I think he's looking at attacking the rear guards, which I super like. And here's the other thing that we forgot to mention. That Brilliant Blister Peter just called down, that's going to be huge when it comes to surviving the multi-attack combo turn.
Oh, wow. So now he ended up calling Shiryuki in the Guardian Circle, and since she can be guarded with, minus 10k across the board. So this is minus 10 doesn't hit anything.
I think that column is just barely big enough to at least pressure one card from Nico's hand.
Yeah, it's a 13k after the -10, so it's just 5k shield, which Nico is more than happy to give up. So yeah, Shiryuki, you can see there, on place on either Vanguard, Rearguard, or Guardian Circle, Salt Blast 2, and 3 of your opponent's front row units get -5k power. If it's on Vanguard or Guard Circle, they get -10k instead. So you can either use it as a 10k shield, but better sometimes, or you can ride it, -10k your opponent's Vanguard, and then start striding them and taking them to town.
Okay.
I think this card is super insane.
Okay, I like this play of Nico where he just decides to stay on grade 2. He knows he wants that first stride because if he can set up his first stride, he's probably in a winning position. And he just now can prep because his Vanguard, I believe it's pronounced Joe Enchanter, is like the perfect setup to just filter your deck, get more pieces that search at Shiryuki or fill up your soul. And this is just perfect for him.
Yep. One thing to know about Joan Enchanter is its skill is the beginning of the right phase, counterblasting one target, one of the copies of the cards that he controls, and then he can search for something, which is the same copy of the card that he searched for. He is indeed going to follow Eric's game plan of staying on grade 2 here, because it's just way more beneficial for him, and he's going to call the Dragerator Hardy, and he's going to get rid of the Cyberster, so that's really good for you right now.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this play. Like, as we mentioned, the main thing that Gridora does is that it turns off the Shibaraku Victor's G-Zone effect. And I think Nico's going to try and win on first stride here. So he can stride into the new P-Clan Collection stride, flip the Victor, and then go for it. So I think that's why he's aggressively fighting for first stride. So you see here, he had to move his board around a bit because that Jukotsu girl was targeted by the Armor Beetle so that it doesn't stand. So instead he's just going to move forward that Rainy Madame, who's going to whiff, and then find him some cards as it goes into Soul.
So, let's see, swinging here, he's trying to think of who he wants to attack into. I think I'd swing a rear here, maybe close off any chances of him top decking anything that uses CB, like...
Yeah, I think these are probably rearguard attacks because in terms of what we know of rearguard units for Peter, these are probably his best grade 2 units that he can have on the board. So if you can remove them early, that also alleviates some of the early pressure if you're gonna stay on the grade 2 gaming.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. The one thing to note though is that Nico has been calling down a board, like, so he's only got 2 cards in hand. So as much as he wants this first ride, I think he's going to struggle to like aggressively grade 2 game for too long. One to pass coming in from Peter. He hits it!
Oh!
Heal is huge. Heal is absolutely huge here.
Oh, that's super big here. So I think he'll just like whiff it now. That'll put himself into Soul since it didn't hit. He'll grab himself back in the original Shiryuki so he can possibly use it again in Peter's turn.
So again, big turn for Nico, but he still only has 4 cards in hand. And as we know, Machining's multi-attack is not GB locked. So if Nico really wanted to go for it, he can go for it. But we see him call down a PG just to use Armor Beetle. That is, I like that play a lot because as we know, when you're against Shiryuki, they're going to be minusing a bunch of power to your Vanguard and they're going to be multi-attacking you to high heaven. Having that PG effect is just really not worthwhile.
No, it isn't. And plus, again, he's on low damage right now, right? He's not really under any form of duress at the moment, at least yet. And so he can kind of just say, well, I'll just call this down for now and make my benefit off it. I'm still up on damage. I'm still up on resources. Still have my Heal Guardian. I'm not really under much threat right now.
Exactly. We see there that Peter attacked Vanguard and Nico chose to intercept, which is, I think implies that Peter wants to put as much damage on Nico as possible now. You know, he's trying to, like, sees that Nico has less cards in hand and wants to try and abuse that fact to try and give him some early damage. And Nico's there being like, okay, well, Jukotsu Girl's done her job. She's soul charged, she's drawn a card. I'm good to go, you know, no big deal going here. But instead we see Nico continuing to stay on grade 2, reusing G1 Chanter, finding more Jukotsu Girls, you know, which is deck thinning. You know, deck thinning's always good. And I think he's just going to try and really, you know, wait for the opportune moment to ride Shiryuki, minus 10k Peter's Vanguard, and then try to win the game from there.
So right now I think he's going to attack into the grade 2 again. This goes face. It's going to be going in for 17 to the Vanguard.
No guard, another comes out. So if Peter does find another high class moth, he knows that's not safe. Power to back row. So I think Peter wants this damage. Yeah, he doesn't. He wants to deny Nico of the soul and the search.
I like that play. That's actually a pretty smart way because you know that your opponent is going to get way more value than you having that extra damage in this particular situation.
Yeah, so this is one of the reasons that I think Nico wanted to like fight for first stride, which is that Shield Fisher can't attack on the Vanguard circle if you didn't call something from non-hand, I think is the wording this turn. We'll put up on the screen for you here. So yeah, if you didn't call rearguards other than from hand, it can't attack. But by taking much of damage, by giving power to the back row, he was able to get the 2 damage he needs to go into Sabriz, which is big for Peter. You know, it quote unquote gives him the first stride, and it takes away a lot of pressure from Nico. So Peter attacks into the rearguard here, kills the Jikotsu girl, which is pretty relevant. But then he also damage-denies Nico, gets a heal, which is great so he can G-guard, and now this puts him in a really good position to survive Nico's quote-unquote combo turn.
Exactly, because him going into Sea Breeze here is basically discard 1, draw 2. So, you know, the drive check is basically a negligible, but this is going to be a very pressuring turn here because he's going to be minus by 10k by Shiryuki going into Nico's turn right now.
Yeah, so he's currently sitting at 8k, which is still, you know, a far sight better than 3k, but it's still not ideal, especially if Nico starts, like, if Nico goes into the new P Fan Collection stride, whose name I just cannot remember, then I think Peter might be looking at losing the game here. But if it's something like a Shibaraku Victor for a setup, then he might have a turn or two to, like, you know, try and squeeze out a win.
Yeah, because like Izishiotome is a really good stride to get the extra multi-attacks going, because now he can copy like one of his other grade 2s that he has on the board, and since it gives the skill of being able to attack from the back row but no power gain, it allows him that if Peter ends up hitting a defensive trigger, putting him back to 18, it can give him still a bit more pressure, but he can still always target his Shiryuki and get some searches going.
Yeah, the big question is, how many 6 flowers was Nico able to find during all those turns of grade 2 gaming and plussing? So, we see here, Nico is going to stride Isushi Otome, who has a lot of text, so we'll read out for you guys. It's an act counterblast 1, which I think he's doing right now. Put a normal unit from drop on the bottom of deck, flip a G-Zen face up, choose 2 rear guards, and then search for one of, basically clone them, and shuffle your deck. So he's copying, it looks like the Rainy Madame, and I think that's dual weapon, which we'll put on the screen after this.
Yes.
And then the big thing about Izushi Otome is that it allows all your units, as long as you have another copy of it in play, they can attack from the back row. So that dual weapon can sit on the back row as a 9k, which still hits into Peter's 8k Vanguard, and then he can then put the Rainy Madame, which is an 8k, on the Axel circle, which now requires 10k shield. So he's just going to set up, and now he, all of his, the two things in the back row can attack from the back row, which is the important part. So now let's take a look at the other thing that Nico searches for, which is dual weapon, which is arguably the other piece of the combo. So dual weapon is the effect that at the end of the battle it attacks. If it doesn't hit, you can retire it. Choose one of your grade 1 or 3 rear guards, search for the same name, and call it to rearguard circle. So you can search for another copy of that Rainy Madame, which then searches for more Shiryuki while still applying massive amounts of pressure.
I mean, the crazy part is when we started this turn, it looked like he will have like 4 attacks. One counterblast later, we already are looking potentially at 7 attacks on the board, and then every dual weapon can be an additional attack on top of that. So this is going to be a very explosive turn for Nico as long as Peter doesn't hit a defensive. Because every single attack is either 9 or 8k. Potentially more with triggers from Nico's side, but this could be very dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think Peter's at risk of losing the game here because Nico hasn't committed any 6 flowers. You know, he doesn't have the Victor. He's only got 1 Victor face up, which I don't think he's going to use. And so I think here, by cloning the Rainy Madames, Nico's pushing more for sort of setup to just trying to find his pieces, putting Peter on maybe 4 or 5 damage so that all the attacks suddenly become lethal. So Peter's going to guard this Rainy Madame. Interesting, so it's going to go into Soul.
Also, the important note is that he's overguarding every tech because we've seen 5k shields being required, but 10k shields being thrown down. So either the grade 2s in Peter's hand are too valuable, or his hand retains mainly triggers and 10k shields.
Yeah, that's the one downside to machining, is that while you do have Brilliant Blister, what you don't have is the insane plussing power of Ruination Book. So you're not as tanky as before, and that might be what causes some problems for Peter in this game.
So right now, Peter is shuffling through his deck here. He's gonna use Dismal to protect his PG. I guess it's just, well, I mean, he only needs like 15k shields. It's fine. It doesn't really matter here.
Yeah, this Jukotsu girl's coming in. He is gonna guard it. He's gonna let Nico search. So we saw that Nico soul blasted the 6 flowers that he soul charged just now to pull out the Shibaraku Victor. And now, is Nico going to find a second 6 flowers with Jukotsu Girl? If so, then I think Peter's very much aware that he has to win next turn or else. That's just a regular Shiryuki, so there's only 1 6 flowers that we know of in circulation. It's a little bit of a relief for Peter. He's not going to be too threatened. But at the same time, having multiple 6 base Shiryukis in rotation for Nico means that he's going to have a lot of defensive power if Peter tries to win.
Mm-hmm. And it's also really potent as offensive power too as well, because he can just rewind next turn if he needs to.
Yeah, exactly. So Vanguard's going to come in here. I think he's going to, guard this as well. So 2 G-Guards coming in for Peter. So we saw he damaged 1, searched for a heal, and had another one. So now we know that he's 3 heals out of deck.
So he's going to G-Guard here. This is going to put him on 23. So the skill of the G-Guard that he's currently using is the Relish Lady. Her skill is requiring and asking your opponent for, hey, would you be so kind as to rest any of your rear guards? If you choose not to, you get to draw a card and soul charge 1, is what he just did. And he's going to put down an over trigger here too as well, which gives him more than enough shield value here to say OTE to pass.
Yeah, Nico getting a heal that doesn't go off and a draw trigger. So I think the power values in this particular situation don't make much of a difference, because Peter's probably like taking one and guarding the other one anyway. Mm-hmm. Saying like he's going to risk the setup. Not having a defensive trigger from Peter here is difficult, because it means that if he does guard this dual weapon, it's going to still hit. And so I think what Nico's probably going to try and do here is he's going to try and maybe fish for the back row dual weapon swing, because that's the one that is easier to guard. Because even if Nico hits a defensive, which he doesn't, this triggered dual weapon is still going to hit, and Peter's going to go to 5. Big heal coming in though. It definitely is useful, but Peter is on 4, and 4 is still very much lethal range for a big Shiryuki turn.
Exactly, and it's just right now, if we counted all of the triggers, because this is also what Mr. Timely said at the beginning of the match, that's 2 heal triggers gone. Right now, it's currently no more heal triggers left in the deck for Peter.
And we saw him guard with the OT, so if Nico goes into the O combo, Peter's definitely no chance of survival. So he is going to stride the Gridora, which turns off the Shibaraku Victor, which is nice. I'm going to flip the Malignantis. I assume shove the PG into Soul for the Malignantis effect. But again, by playing the aggressive Grade 2 game, he's used up 2 Armor Beetles, he's burned through a Cybister. We know he has a high-class Moth in hand, but it's not really that much. There's a second high-class Moth. I don't know if Peter can really put forward that much of a good offense here. He needs to have at least the Machining Princess.
To at least get a little bit of multi-attack going would be kind of nice, yes.
We'll see what he can do here.
I think it will come down to what is going to be in Nico's hand, because we have seen a couple of Shiryukis being filtered, but as we've been noting, we haven't seen too many of the new Shiryuki, the 6 flowers. And now that the Superior Call engine of Nico has been cancelled, or it's been negated, it all comes down to what Nico is going to hard draw into the cards to build up a defensive field. So either this could help Peter if Nico's hand is just mainly Grade 2s and Grade 1s, but if Nico has like 1 or 2 Shiryukis, this could be very, very dangerous.
Yeah, at the same time, like, let's take a look at Nico's hand. It's absolutely huge.
True.
He's been searching off the Jukotsu girls. He's added back with both Rainy Madams. Like, you have to assume there's at least 2 of the base Shiryuki in that hand. So it's, he has 5 soul. If he needs to, he can use both of them and shut you down. So yeah, Malignantis there is going to go into push the PG into Soul to minus 10k onto Nico's Vanguard. Side Bistro and Hornet comes down. No Princess, no nothing. Peter has no cards in hand as well. He's dropped everything to go in. This is not looking good.
Yeah, he's currently in his brave state at the moment. This is very brave of him to commit this much cards to the board.
Yeah, this is only a 15k Mantis. Like, he rested the Moth, you can't even boost, which means that one Shiryuki here turns off all of Nico's rear guards, and even the Ghidorah searching for Intrude Scissors to restand the Mantis won't hit without a trigger.
One thing to note though, he actually Persona rode this turn, so that is...
Oh, he did, I forgot about that. So yeah, it would at least... So the Shiryuki at least negates the Persona ride, but again, these columns are not that huge.
No, they're not.
I mean, Nico damages a 6 flowers, which is good for Peter. It means that there's one less 6 flowers to clone. But again, like, you're only going to have 3, maybe 4 cards in hand at the end of this turn. I'm not feeling confident here. Intercept and not, yep, just a raw 15k shield from the Heal Guardian because Nico can't G-Guard under Ghidorah.
Currently still has 6 more cards left in hand. That's Nico. It's going to Soul Blast one, Soul Blasting the PG here. It's going to call it Scissors out. And then Scissors is going to restand the Mantis. So I have a little bit of a nice little multi-attack going on here.
Yep, so the Intrude Scissors is going to be 32, 10k from Ghidorah, 10k from Persona Ride. The Mantis will restand at 25, plus 6 from itself, plus 10 from Persona Ride. And so, despite what I said earlier, I realized as well, I completely forgot about Malignantis giving minus 10k to Nico's Vanguard. So Nico's currently on 2k.
Yes.
So 2k versus 20 and 30 is actually, it's pretty relevant. I think Nico could, like, if he PGs the Vanguard, I'm assuming, but then he's probably going to end up taking, like, at least 1 more damage from either the Mantis or the Intrude Scissors.
Mm-hmm. So Peter at an angle of hitting a double crit, or at least, like...
I mean, there's one.
There's one.
There's one.
Like, a double crit angle is something that you could possibly win out on here. Still has, like... Oh, I miscounted. So he probably had, like, close to 11 cards in hand.
Yeah,
still has,
like 7 left.
His
All
hand was
onto
huge.
Scissors. Another crit. Nope, a draw comes down. It's still pretty good. You know, it gives him an extra card to shield with, power into the Mantis. So Peter does have 3 damage on the board. The question is, are those 7 cards in Nico's hand enough to stop that 3 damage? Because this is now a 42k Scissors with crit and a 35k Mantis coming in. It's not unbearable. Oh, I think he has another Scissors in his drop zone that he's going to call out to stand a booster maybe.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Oh, I like that play a whole lot. That is
There it
actually
is!
pretty good. Yeah.
So because Nico took damage, Intrude Scissors can call itself out for Counter Blast 1 at the end of the Vanguard battle. Then on place, Soul Blast 1. Stand the Mantis, the high class moth. So that Mantis column is now 43 against 2k. That's 50k, that's 45k shield. That's a lot. Especially when you can't G-Guard.
So he's currently thinking of how he wants to handle this, because Shiryuki would minus it by 10. So it'll still be still 35, still more than 20k, 30k shield. So he's going to take this one.
No defensive. And finally, a 52k Intrude Scissors. Again, we're looking for 55k shield.
Ooh, over trigger.
And OT, yep. 5k more, I think.
He can't intercept.
Yep. Because of the high class moth stunning the duel. Yep, so he gives up the extra shield. And he survives, but he's only got 4 cards in hand. We know one of them is a 6 flowers, and the other one is another one is a base Shiryuki. So we'll see if Nico can win here. So he gets the rewrite to restand, which is nice. Let's see if he minus 10k's on Peter's Vanguard. He is going to do it. So I think, to me, this signals that he is going to push the game this turn. Again, the other issue is that Otome calls directly from the deck. So under the effects of Ghidorah, it doesn't actually plus, and all it does is enable Nico to attack from the back row, which he could definitely use Nico could definitely use the plus right now when he's only got 4 pieces in hand.
I mean, in this particular situation, he probably has to be a bit aggressive. Oh, we see the Shiryuki stride coming down here. I can, depending on what he has in his hand, I can understand this because he would just want to be as aggressive as possible. As both players are running low on resources, we see both of them already at 4 damage. Probably most heals and overtriggers are already out of the deck. So I think both players are acknowledging that they're running low on resources and they have to close this game quick, because if they do not, then their opponent might be taking the game and run with it.
Yeah.
So with good. Okay. So with the effect of Joe Chanter being able to copy the grade 3 Shiryuki of 6 Flowers, allowing itself to be also called 6 Flowers, activating the effect of Ice Petal Shiryuki, all your Shiryuki units attacking from the back row, it also allows 6 Flowers to use their own skill of minusing power from Peter by a lot less now. So this is going to be actually really dangerous. He might be looking to close out the game right now.
Yeah, so Peter's currently on a 3k Vanguard because of the -10 from riding the Shiryuki, and -5 from the Ice Petal. And then if any of these attacks whiff, which they will now because Peter's on 5 and he can't afford to take damage, that 6 Flowers in the back row will give him an extra -10, putting him on -8k. And sure, there's no Victor coming out, but he still has, what, 4 attacks to guard this turn with a 4-card hand? I'm not feeling good about this.
It's going to be tough because he also has no more heal triggers left. This might be the end of the rope here for him. Let's see if he can guard anything.
We know that one of the cards in Peter's hand is a PG. Nope, he takes the 6 damage, and that's good game. There you go, folks. So Nico will be advancing to the top 4. It was a good run from Peter. I think his deck is very well built, but I think losing all your heals and OTs that early is just a little bit... It's a bit of a death sentence against the deck that relies on putting you to like -20k and just looping attacks forever. So again, really well played from both players, and I think an exciting start to our top 8.
What's your takeaway from that though, Eric?
It was a very interesting matchup because you saw both players acknowledging the opponent's playstyle and their game plan, because both players really knew that going into their first stride, that could be advantage for either player. Either the Ghidorah player is going to shut down a lot of potential of the Shiryuki player by locking down their Superior Call engine with the copying effect, but then Nico also knowing that he needs to have this first stride to get this set up, set everything up, be very aggressive, explode a lot of damage early on, so that once he goes into his kill turn, the amount of options for defensive triggers and defensive capabilities are very limited. And with that grade 2 gaming, we saw both players knowing the road they needed to take for victory, and that's basically what we expect to see at these top tables, where players really know the intricate parts of their game plan and their opponent's decks as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like, both of these guys are top tier players. Like, Nico's been well known online for a while for like being, you know, the mad genius of deck building, but when push comes to shove, he is a good player. He knows the game, he knows the decks. Likewise, you know, Peter's been one of the top commentators for NA. Like, his understanding of how decks work is, you know, almost second to none. So like, in this, I think, was definitely the showcase of seeing like, okay, I know how your deck works, you know how my deck works, let's dance.
I think the MVP for both of these matchups this game is the Styles Dragon Joe Chanter. I think that card kind of carried Nico's game plan for most of the match. So him being able to ride that was kind of one of the ways of him being able to secure his angle to win here.
Yeah, for sure. And what's really interesting as well is that I've seen some lists, you know, from my local, like the Shiryuki players I speak to, they're starting to cut Ju-On Chanter in favor of like, you know, 10k grade 2s from D format, just have a slightly better, like, you know, grade 2 game. You don't get rushed by other 9ks. But again, like you said, Ju-On Chanter really put in the work. Like, that extra plus really, you know, went the extra mile and in the end secured Nico the win. But yeah, that's going to be it for the top 8 game, folks. We're going to cut to a quick break now, and then we're going to be back with a top 4 match. Again, on Twitter, hashtag BRO2022. Don't go anywhere, and we'll see you all very soon. Welcome back, everyone, to the Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022 EU Circuit Top Cut. We just had an amazing start to the day with an incredible game in top 8 of Shiryuki versus Mega Colony, and we're jumping right now into the top 4. But while we wait for the players to set up, I just want to quickly talk about the game that we just saw, because if you had told me, say, 2 months ago, in the middle of BSF season, that we would have seen Shiryuki versus Meg Colony post-restriction in the top 8 of a tournament, I would have been like, Interesting. But I think the fact that the metagame has evolved from between P-Clan Collection and the new restriction list, I think just shows to you how diverse and interesting the new premium format is. What do you guys think about this, JJ? Oop, I think you're muted, buddy.
I think his mic is off.
It's fine. I think it just goes to show that Vanguard is a game where even a lot of people can end up dropping their decks and just leaving and moving on to something else. That people who keep on playing something that they enjoy and like. And Peter has been known to play, all forms of Mega Colonies. It's really nice to know that he still kept committed to it and he's still playing it, actually. So that's really cool to see. And seeing Shiryuki, I personally feel that a lot of people say, oh, Shiryuki is so underappreciated, so they underplay how good the deck is. The deck's been good for a while. It just took everybody a long time to catch up to figure out that it's actually that good. So now it's common knowledge now. It's sort of like finding an album. It's like, oh, they're so not mainstream.
Yeah.
Come on, she's been good. Now you caught up.
I mean, losing the surprise factor kind of hurts a bit. Like, one of the big strengths of the deck at the beginning was nobody knows what it does. Like, I remember, at the VGCS that I was running, that was one of the first times I saw Shiryuki, and the opponent was playing Eradicator into it. And Shiryuki player just slams 3 copies of 6 Flowers, counterblast 3, minus 30 back, and the Eradicator player was just like, oh. And yeah, and now it's like, okay, well, now we know, okay, he's gonna rush me with Jakotsu Girl, he's gonna add a bunch of Shiryuki's hand, he's gonna do this, and we can see, like, again, where that expression of skill really comes into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the brackets are finally ready, so let's jump over and take a look at our top 4. Alright, so in the top bracket, we had Dave Musrax Vect with his MFD Turbo prevailing over the AO champion Stephen Lee, making it through to top 4. Congratulations to Dave. And he will be up against KG Spixtis, who's playing NLK Barrow, who beat Raptors 11 on Vanquisher to make it through the top 4. So I'm pretty sure we're going to look at Musrax versus Spixtis for the top 4 match, because, come on, we can't end this stream without showing MFD Turbo on stream, right? Then on the other half of the bracket, we have Aya playing Dungaree, who managed to beat Kitten Pants, also on Vanquisher, to make it through to top 4. And as we just watched, Nico squeezing it in over Peter to also make it through to top 4. So that's going to be Vanquisher versus Shiryuki in your other half of top 4. And I just want to quickly highlight here, guys. We had 3 Narukami decks in the top cut, and now there's only 1 remaining.
That's how top 8 can happen. Like when something is favored, it can suddenly flip on its head. Like top 8 usually has the best of the players, and these small changes, these small decisions can just turn everything in favor of the other player. So yeah, that's the exciting part of top 8 and all these matches. And I think top 4 is gonna be just exciting, or probably even more.
And due to the fact, to building on that part, is the fact they were on the lower side of the bracket, so then they ended up playing against themselves as well too. So there's like 2 played into a mirror match, 1 played sort of by himself. So then it ended up have to be 1 to actually make it through. So it's also come down to like where you're seating ones, where you are your pool. So it's just, hey, it's kind of how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, come on, JJ, Eric. If I had told you guys that a week ago that top 4 would have no Nightmare Dolls, no Mega Colony, no Highlander, you guys would not have believed me, right?
I would have called you crazy. I would say, what magic juju is this?
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty incredible. But yeah, so the players are still getting ready. So while we do that, let's jump in and take one more in-depth look at these players' deck lists. So I think we're going to start with Musrax, looking at his deck list first. So MFD Turbo, I'm going to let you handle the list, Eric, but before that, I'm going to quickly explain how the ruling works. So I'm going to put the judge hat on. So Mystery Flare Dragon's effect is, at the end of your turn, if you have on place, if you have 19 total grades in bind, at the end of your turn, discard your hand and get an extra turn. Now, the reason you can quote-unquote get 2 extra turns is because Chrono Jet's effect is, stride from the deck, quote unquote. It rides away from the deck, and at the end of turn, you retire that grade 4 and ride a grade 3 from Soul. That's the exact wording. And because of the game rules, when you retire the grade 4 from Vanguard Circle, if you do not have a grade 3 in Soul to re-ride, because you've retired your grade 4 Vanguard, you now have no Vanguard, and therefore you have to ride anything from whatever you can from the Soul. Therefore, if you have a second copy of Mystery Flare Dragon in the Soul, you can re-ride into the Mystery Flare Dragon from Mystery Flare Dragon, which means that the second one that you re-ride into at the end phase will have its on-place effect go off, and because there is an end of turn effect that still needs to resolve, you will repeat the end phase check timing, and then the second Mystery Flare Dragon will then be able to discard your hand, which obviously doesn't exist because you discarded it for the first Mystery Flare, and queue up the second extra turn. Now, the way to do this before is that you had to activate Chronojet twice and choose not to ride the first time, so that the first Mystery Flare could retire itself and then re-ride anything else. Sorry, the first one would not retire and you would just re-ride something over the existing Mystery Flare, and then the second Chronojet effect would retire the grade 4 that's no longer there because you rode over it, and then that would give you the Mystery Flare install that you needed to then re-ride into the Mystery Flare again. Now, fortunately, we don't have to go through all of that nightmare anymore. Now we can just use Time Jarret Dragon to put a card from hand into Soul and guarantee that Mystery Flare and Soul. So that's the core combo of what Dave is trying to do. He's trying to just rush that as fast as possible. Walk us through the rest of this, Eric.
So, basically to build on what Ben just said, that's the main combo that we're trying to achieve. So the entire list that we see before us basically tries to accelerate that as fast as possible and also as consistently as possible. So we see the 4 Mystery Flares, which are basically the main combos. We see our Chrono Jets, but then we see the rest of the pieces, and we see multiple cards that bind a lot of stuff. We have Renovate Wing, which binds cards. We have Naboo, which binds extra cards. And then we see a lot of cards that then also can search for specific pieces. So we see the Grade 2 promo that came out in the Clan Collection set that allows us to time leap in any pieces. So if we miss a specific card, like a Renovate Wing or maybe on one of our other combos, that card allows us to get it on the board. Like, Time Jarret is very important. That's the way that we allow this combo to achieve as fast as possible. So with this Grade 2, we can potentially search it out more consistently. And on top of that, we take a look at the rightmost card, that Grade 2, that's a spicy tag. That's a Time Leap card that's, if I remember correctly, is without a GB skill. So you can use it in the early game to Time Leap any one of your units into a specific card that you need to once again attain the cards that you need to set up either your Bind Zone or set up the Mystery Flare combo, and that's then allows you to be more consistently. And all the other cards that we see so far, Smoke Gear Dragon is just another consistent card for Chrono Jet to get your discards or your draw engine. Lost Gearduck 8 can turn any Grade 3 or Grade 4 into a Chrono Jet, or in any of the other Grade 3 if you need them. Steamroad Dragon, same deal here. And then we see also Lishma, which is another early game Time Leap engine that once again allows us to set up our combos or potentially our setup for the Mystery Flare combo build. So this entire build is mainly focused on accelerating our Bind Zone or to get to our specific key pieces. And we're going to see that in a moment here when Dave is going to pilot this deck, because you're going to see a lot of specific choices with these cards to go into a specific card to get every aspect of the deck as close to a 100% consistency rate.
Yeah, for sure. So let's flip over and take a look at Muzrax's G-Zone. So while we look at this G-Zone, one thing I want to highlight is that the point of his deck is the turbo to Grade 3 as fast as the 19 bind as fast as physically possible. Like, he's trying to do this double Mystery Flare combo. Like, if he goes first, he's trying to do this double Mystery Flare combo on the opponent's Grade 2, right? Like, he's just going to ride up and go for it. And the important thing with Mystery Flare is that it states that you cannot ride during your extra turns, but it doesn't say anything about striding.
That's the fun part here. So the interesting thing is that with this build, you have two options. As you already explained, you can go for the Super Turbo build where you go in your first Grade 3 turn, your opponent is still at Grade 2, and you're going to go double the extra turn and just go ham. Or you go singular turn if you cannot set it up, but during your second turn, if you top deck a Grade 3 or a Grade 4 or many of your discards that count as a full stride discard, you can just add an extra stride on top of it. But Another option that's available in this particular list, thanks to the existence of Croc Dragon, you could, if you already are at Chronojet, the following turn, on turn 4, just ride a Mystery Flare from hand, get the skill to be on standby, and then go into a Croc stride to superior ride another Mystery Flare during a battle phase to get the second proc as well. So this is another way to attain potentially the extra turn stack as well. So the deck has a lot of flexibility to set up either directions. You can go for super turbo, mid lane, or just control it a bit out and go a bit slower, but also a bit more consistent, that you don't need to high roll as much.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool to see. And like, you know, if you're like, even if your opponent's not on grade 2, like the stride options you have in the form of Schließma and Ragnarok are both insane. Like, you know, Ragnarok maybe fell out of favor in the mid G and like early premium eras, but now that people are back onto draw PGs, Ragnarok is super lethal. In the same way Schließma, like, you know, you're setting up to 19 bind, you're biting a bunch of your own cards really aggressively. When you stride into Schließma on that extra turn, you have all the rear guards to choose from to call back with Schließma as the extra attacks. So I'm really excited to see, like, you know, both can Dave turbo to this combo fast enough, and if he does, how, you know, if he has so many options, like which way does he choose to actually close out this game. But of course, it's not just Dave we're talking about. He does have an opponent to play against. So let's take a look at his opponent's list, which is Dark Irregulars. So, as I mentioned, this is another very fast Ride Grade 3 win the game combo turbo deck. So, as we saw with Notorious Sets list on stream yesterday, the point of this deck is to get to 13 or 20 soul as fast as possible with the Dimension Creepers, with Werewolf Ketzer, with Fu Ginlin, ride the NLK, use the NLK to re-ride into the Barrow Magnus, and then Barrow Magnus to get multi-attacks, all the while pulling out a bunch of Enigmatic Assassins, which are going to be 20k, maybe even more from the triggers. And again, this is just a super streamlined list where almost every single card in this deck that isn't NLK, Barrow, or Enigmatic Assassin, or Hope on Damp, gives you soul in some way, shape, or form. And, you know, when you have all these, like, you know, 8, 9 attacks, the Hope on Damp on top just makes it really, really hard to guard all of those attacks when they're hitting for, like, you know, 25, 30k shield each. What do you think about this, JJ?
I think I like the Castile here as a tech option. Some of the other previous lists that we did see before did not play this card, but I do like it as an addition, as an alternate win condition. So if you could go into NLK, then Castile, then Barrow, or, you know, Barrow straight off the bat off of that NLK, you still have an alternate win condition if your opponent accidentally survives, and you can still go into Castile after if you need to. I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's super hot. So just remind everyone what the Castile does is, at the beginning of your battle phase, so you cannot NLK into it, counterblast 1, draw a card, and then your opponent chooses one of the following 4 effects for every 5 cards in your soul, and you have to choose, you know, you can't choose one multiple times. So if you have 20 cards in soul, which you probably will because you're Dark Irregulars, you're using NLK, and you're aiming for 20 for Hope on Damp in the first place, the effects are, all of your front row gains a crit, your opponent's Vanguard power becomes 1, your opponent's auto effects don't activate, so they can't PG, and finally, your opponent puts a card from their hand face down to their damage zone. This works even if your opponent's on 5 damage, so if they're on 5 and you're on 20 soul, you just ride the Castile and you just win the game in the start of your battle phase. So yeah, it's a pretty sick alternate win con here. Like, you know, again, like we mentioned with Gears, both of these decks are super fast, turbo, like, you know, win the game when I ride grade 3 combo decks, but they both have these sort of backup, you know, alternate win con options as well, and I think it's really cool deck building to see. But the players, I think, are about ready to get into the game, so let's take a quick look at the G-Zone before we move on. So, let's fix this as a G-Zone here. As we said, pretty straightforward. It's just got a bunch of G-Guards, because as we say, this deck doesn't care about its G-Zone. It's just trying to get as much soul as possible, doesn't need GB, ride grade 3, and then just straight up win. The main things here are the Blader Mals, which can put triggers from soul back into the deck so he doesn't deck out, and the Forfax, which he can then go into after the Barrow swing, just to give him a little bit more push if he needs that reach. Anything else either of you want to say about this G-Zone?
I think it's I think it's perfect for this situation, and we're gonna see it being utilized for the maximum capacity with these Z-guards and potentially these strides.
Yep, I mean that's the main thing about the Mystery Flare combo, right? You are going to be on grade 3, and if your opponent's on grade 3 and you know they get extra turns, they can still at least G-guard. So it might not work out that smooth, but Yep, I think we are just going to jump into the game right now and show you this top 4 of Dave with his Gear Chronicle versus KG Fix This with his Dark Irregulars. So we are here, Dave on the left and Fix This on the right, and I think the players are just about ready to begin. Let's hide the Shiryuki. The game was exciting, but we have a new game to be excited about. So, I think it goes without saying, guys, right, that when both decks are ride grade 3 and win, whoever goes first is favored.
Yeah, I think we all should stay very focused, because if we blink, it could be over in a second here.
It's like two ships sailing, and it's just which one gets to the destination first.
Yep,
Sounds
so
like a
Fix
math
This goes
equation.
first, which is obviously you're already big favorite.
Oh, that's a big start for Mushrax, immediately putting the Mystery Flare in Soul.
Yep, so we said before that Fu Ginlin was one of the best cards for DI because it disrupts the opponent and it turbo Soul. But in this case, that's not disruption. That is exactly what he wants, right? He wants the Mystery Flare and Soul. So KG Fix This needs to get a lot of Soul really, really fast. Otherwise, Dave is set up.
Oh no, he's not even gonna need Time Dragon after this, I think.
No, the only thing that Mushrax has to focus on is just getting the bind. Just getting the 19 bind. That's all he needs to focus on this gameplay for the rest of the game. And he's set.
I mean, it's a pretty good game for Fix This as well. Like, he rode the Ketsa, which is arguably the best ride target for the deck. And he has a Fu, on turn 1, which means that very quickly he'll be able to just get to... It's going to be much easier for him to get to 13 or 20 Soul, whatever it is he needs. So yeah, I think both players are off to a lightning start, it's safe to say. So the question now is, like you say, Dave needs to focus entirely on getting to 19 bind. But here's the thing, a lot of the bind pieces cost Counterblast, right? So does Dave maybe try to damage deny here?
This is interesting. Dave not damage denying here can be big for Fix It, because if they have the Poison Abductor, they can go off here, which we saw in the past. Or we see the Emblem Master, that's also...
His 3 Soul is pretty good, yeah. I mean, the one big thing here is, I don't know if you noticed, but KG's Fix This damaged his Emblem Master. Sorry, not Emblem, his Assassin. That is...
Ooh, that's also pretty huge here.
Yeah, his Enigmatic Assassin is part of the core of his engine here. It's limited to 1 for good reason. And the big issue with Fix This is that he's not running Killer Tail in his deck. So he can't pull it out of the damage zone. And even if he heals it out, he can't soul charge it from the drop zone. So his win con has just lost a lot of its fangs.
I guess if he does draw into Variant's Dragon form, which is a grade 3 that they do play in the deck, he could possibly get the Assassin into the Soul, which can help him out a little bit, but then he'll need to top deck into it, and he only runs 1 copy. So drawing it here will probably be an angle he needs to try to aspire to.
Yeah, for sure. It's the only way he has left. And the other thing here is that he's used his Emblem Masters to soul charge his Foos, which is, not bad. It's 3 Soul, but you really want those Foos on the board, not in Soul, right? The best target for Emblem Master is more like a Dimension Creeper or a Ketsa or something along those lines.
Also, to come back to an earlier point that you made, Ben, the build that Mushrax is playing hardly needs any counterblast. Almost every skill costs Soul. So Fu is actually Dave's best friend in this matchup.
Yeah, it's giving him all the Soul he needs to get his bind effects. This suddenly might flip around. Shirley is, Hysteric Shirley is a nice drive check. It adds him a card, finds him another piece of Soul, and Shirley herself is +2 Soul. So I think maybe Fix This knows that Dave isn't counterblast reliant, and it's just okay, I'm just gonna swing and take the damage. Would you say then maybe that if Dave isn't counterblast reliant, maybe rushing is the correct option here, just so that the NLK turn is a bit more threatening?
I think it's probably the more plausible line here, because we also see that the first damage is the Grey Exhaust Dragon. That's one of the cards that does use counterblast for more consistency. So that already tells us that that's already less reason to even damage an eye, because probably Mushrax probably has less options that actually are using counterblast from this moment.
Yeah, so we'll see what he wants to do on this turn. I think this is going to be a big thinking turn for him, because he realizes that, sure, Fix This has a lot of Soul, but he's not on 13 and nowhere near 20. But you can't just say oh, I'm not going to die to NLK this turn. So he is going to pass the turn to damage an eye, which means that unless Fixis high rolls here, without Killertail, he's not going to be able to afford NLK into the Barrow, because he's only got 4 Selfish Engraver and no Edge in the Nights. Sorry, Edge in the Darkness. So his Fixis' Battle Phase countercharge is very limited. So he has to save that 1 Counter Blast for the NLK turn, which means he's not spending Counter Blast on the Drag form, which means he's not going to have the Assassin, which means that if he NLKs into Barrow, he's going to need to leave the Engraver on the board so that he can afford to Barrow. We'll see what he does here. So he had 9 cards in Soul, so that's what the dice represents, which is going to be plus 18k on the NLK. Fu pushes in a Hope on Damp. Ooh.
Is it another Mystery Flare going to Soul there?
It is. He's got 2 Mystery Flares in Soul. That is terrifying. So losing the Hope on Damp here isn't as bad for Sphinxis because he does have 2 Hope on Damp in his list. So at the end of the road, he's going to start using all of his Creepers and Ketzers now. Bind the Ketzer to Soul Charge 2. He still has another Ketzer in the Soul. There is the Barrow that he needs to rewrite into, so it's still alright. He's got another Ketzer to get through. Soul charges his 1 off Gastille. That's pretty unfortunate. And a heal. He's on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's on exactly 13 Soul. NLK is live.
Now the question is, which angle is Fixit going to go for? Because the situation with only 1 face-up counterblast isn't that really ideal, so you don't have a lot of explosive options, especially with now that Assassin is also locked currently in the damage zone.
Yeah, the question is, does he have one of his 4 Selfish Engravers? That's his only source of countercharge right now, and is the only way that he can extend past an NLK. And again, because we mentioned Dave, is just trying to ride up and win, he's not... Fixis isn't playing Rhodia, so he doesn't have the ride down into a tanky, 15k grade 2 to defend with. So the only real sort of reprise that Fixis has is that Dave has not been building any bind zone yet. Dave has 0 cards in his bind zone, so he's very far away from Mystery Flare right now.
That is true, but the thing about Dave's list is that in the early game, he doesn't really focus on binding because the only option he has is his 2 of Naboo. It's going to happen on turn 3 if he has access to his Renovate Wing. So if he has 1 or 2 copies, Dave could explode the very next turn.
So we see the Selfish Engraver does come down. Space has come down a PG and a Heal Guardian just because he needs bodies on the board to shove into Soul with NLK. Oh boy. So he's on 19 Soul, which means that he will have 20 after he goes off of NLK. So the question is he just going to go for it, or is he going to try and maybe rewrite into Hope on Damp, just try and like get some crits and force Muzrax to die here? Or is he going to NLK back into a Gastille, pray to survive Muzrax's setup turn, and just win the game off of Gastille? That's also an option.
Mm-hmm. Also going to Barra Magnus as well, because he also gets the counter charge off of the grade 2. So he could also still go into a Barra Magnus play with triple crit. It's also a possibility.
Yep. It's this is probably the most intense thinking that both players are gonna have to do right here, right now. Like, do they want the game to end soon, or are they gonna try and like grasp every straw of victory they have access to? And like you say, like, if you told me that it is possible for Dave to go from 0 to 19 grades in bind at once, I would totally believe you.
Well, I've done it myself. It's definitely possible, but it all comes down to luck and what type of cards he's going to see in the top cards of his deck. Because the thing with Renovate Wing is you are still dependent on the top 3 cards to get the bind. So with already 2 Mystery Flares in the Soul, that also lowers the potential of the high roll because you cannot really consistently bind Mystery Flares from your deck as well with this fact.
Yeah, so Sphinxis there just getting a warning from the judges because he forgot to get his Protect marker on ride, and that is a mandatory action. So we've just given him the Protect marker now, and we're back to Dave guarding this Heal Guardian. Would you guard this? What do you think, Eric? Would you guard this?
I honestly, I think I would take it because the Vanguard does come quite threatening, and you're gonna have like big numbers, and I think guard maybe the early one here. It depends. I don't know what Musrek's hand is, but I think I personally would guard the rear guards and maybe take the Vanguard. But I'm a very high risk player. I just like to take. I see a double crit Vanguard. I just say no guard. I don't believe you're gonna hit crits. That's my playstyle. I know not a lot of players favor that, but that's just me personally. I like to take risk.
Yeah, so you see there, Musrek's getting the defensive draw, which is massive. It turns off the rest of his rear guards. Heal coming in from Spixis is excellent. It's a resource heal as well, the one of, which means that if Musrax does go into a big turn, he can G-guard and refund all his resources and go again next turn. So 1 damage there, no crits being checked. No defensive from Musrax. He's only on 20k right now. And then he's going to NLK, I think, into the Barrow, which is going to be 33, which does still hit quite heavily. So maybe Musrax will then maybe burn the Heal Guardian, just a -2 crit.
Also in favor, what we see here is that the damage on for Dave is honestly very nice, because I see just a trigger and a grade 1, so that's low grades going out of the deck. And that's what you want to see as a turbo player for Mystery Flare.
So Spixis here is resolving his NLK. We'll see what he goes into. It looks like Gastille. Oh, he's choosing to go for it. So this Gastille is only 12, so it currently doesn't hit, but it does have a crit. So Dave might still want to guard this.
Yep. So he's looking at it as, I have 1 damage. If you can't combo me, homie, this is not gonna look good for you for next turn.
Yeah, exactly. He's pretty much telling Dave, get to 19 bind right now or die. So once again, Gastille on the screen for you folks. He has the 20 soul because NLK puts 2 cards from hand to soul, so he's definitely on 20. So at the start of Spixis' next turn, all of his fronters are going to gain a crit. Musrax's Vanguard is going to be set to 1 power. Musrax won't be able to PG or use his G-Guard's auto abilities, and he will just put a card from hand into damage. So Musrax very intelligently decides to PG there. The crit coming in from Spixis would have been lethal. So now we say, Musrax, ride grade 3, show us what you can do.
So we know he has the Chrono Jet in hand from turn 1, so we most likely going to see that coming down in the Vanguard here. But then the question is, what is the rest of his hand? Does he have Renovate Winged Dragon? Is he able to go and try for the super high roll, or is he going to take it a bit slower and just go for his try turn here?
So I know that he usually goes like Force 1 onto the rear guards. He's currently going Force 2 onto the rear guard, which to me implies that he's not going to commit to the combo this turn, because I think if you knew that you could get to 19 bind and you were going all in for the Mystery Flare combo, I would just put Force 2 on Vanguard and just go for it, right? But yeah, he discards the 3rd Mystery Flare to stride and he goes into Schlichma. And Schlichma, I believe, doesn't aggressively set up your bind.
Ooh,
so
he had all 4 Mystery Flares in his hand.
the 4th one comes onto the rear guard.
That's
circle.
painful
Yikes.
here. That might be problematic, because that means he needs I think he needs a specific card, but that doesn't. I think he's out of his options here, because if I look at his deck list, he doesn't have a way to put the Mystery Flare back into his deck, and that
From the drop zone, right? Yeah.
So that might be an issue here.
So the Mystery Flare that was called from hand does get bound with Renovate Wing. Yeah, so now he's on 7, which is not awful, but it's still a far cry from 19, unfortunately. We'll see what he can do here. Again, Schlichma's not a bad option. It's not a full turbo, and it's only like a setup, and I think it means that no matter what happens, Musrax is not winning the game this turn, right?
No, Musrax has to do a very specific play, and it's not a nice one, because what he needs to do to get his win condition is he needs to get a Mystery Flare back onto the board, together with a Garuntar, then use the Garuntar skill to put it on the bottom of the deck and not call anything from it, because then he has a Mystery Flare back in his deck.
Yeah, so we know that there is 2 Mystery Flares in Soul, 1 in Drop, and 1 in Bind. So he needs to somehow get one of the ones in Soul or the 1 in Drop onto his Vanguard circle somehow, right?
Yeah.
We'll see how he can do that, if he can do that. So he does have the grade 3 Chronojet on the rearguard circle that he can bind with Schließmar to get a multi-attack on the Force 2 and get him closer to 19 bind. But I do think it is looking kind of dangerous for Muzrax here.
What I think what Mushrik is going to do in this turn is he's going to bind the grade 2 Grunter, and then from the during the Superior Call, he's going to Superior Call Misty Flare and a Grunter, activate the Grunters on play skill to put the Misty Flare back onto the bottom of the deck. Thus not giving him 5 attacks, but he's probably going to go for 4 attacks to just set up his Misty Flare next turn. Because if he doesn't do that, his entire win condition is out of the game. Because he also doesn't have any more grade 4s left in his deck.
Yeah, I think that's a good line of play. It definitely sounds like what he's going to do here. And again, he can always you can choose to not boost with his Steam Breath, and then call the Kurunta to the Force 2, and then boost the Kurunta so it still hits numbers, thereby still putting pressure on Sphinxes. So yeah, no, based on what you've just said, I would agree now that Dave is not in a dangerous position, but at the same time, he's not exactly home scot-free, right?
No, he's not in like the ultimate favorite position. Like, he has an option, but it's definitely not where you want to be as a Misty Flare Turbo player. Ideally, in the ideal situation, you were already off to the races at this point.
Yeah, I think he's currently still a little bit short of 19 though, right?
I think it's more in a realm of like around 12.
So if he binds the Kurunta and calls out a Mystery Flare, that reduces his total bind count though. So I think even if he gets there, he still needs to work a little bit harder to get to 19. So he's just gonna double checking right now with the judges. So that's 3. That's 2, so 6, 5, 11. He's on 15 right now.
Okay,
there's
15.
a trigger in there. Yep. Okay, so it's actually not too bad. I think one more re-innovate will get there, right?
Yeah. If he's gonna call down the Misty Flare, he's gonna go back to 11. But one renovate wing can get you to 19 from 11. That's definitely doable.
But he ended up discarding that renovate wing actually.
Right. Maybe he has one more. Is what we're hoping for.
Like, the important thing is that he doesn't have to do it this turn. He can also do it next turn, as he's not going to go into a Misty Flare at the end of this particular turn. So he can take it easy, but at the same time, we see he only has 1 card left in hand. And apparently
no cards in hand now.
I think he's just going to try to win it. I think he's just going to go for broke here.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, when your opponent has a 20 Soul Gastille and you're on 3 damage, I don't think you can take it easy.
Okay. I like the initiative that he's taking here, but if he could have done this, wasn't there an option for him to then just try to go for the combo here this game? Or was it like
no the combo was offline the moment he already drew 4 Misty Flares, because we know he drew all 4 of his Misty Flares in the earlier turns, and I think the moment that Dave saw those 4 cards in his hand, he was like, okay, what's plan B? And I think
this take damage here, right?
Probably
is that
plan
defensive? B. It's not a defensive. That's good for Muzrax. If Sphinxes hit a defensive here, that would have turned off this crit Chronojet, which is like his only last source of pressure. And again, Sphinxes only has like 6 cards in hand, including the Protect Marker, and the Protect Marker is probably being saved for the Vanguard swing. So this is not like the easy thing to guard either. I would consider guarding this one, because if you Protect Marker the Vanguard swing, any triggers Muzrax hits will probably go into the rear guards that he calls from Schließmar. And one of them already has the Force 2 behind it, and the other one can receive a crit very, very easily. So any further attacks past this could potentially be lethal.
That's right. So he's going to be using the skill of Chronojet here in the rear guard circuit, getting plus 5k and Sentinel Restrict. He's going to be using Schließmar's skill here, binding and calling something. So he's thinking what to call here.
It's probably going to be just beaters, yeah. Just high numbers.
Mystery Flare, it's 15k, it's the biggest body you can make.
So you probably would assume PGing the Vanguard is the wisest here, but seeing as the Chronojet already comes with inherent extra critical, maybe Fixit is contemplating to just PG the Chronojet in this situation.
Doesn't Chronojet turn off Sentinels?
It does.
Is the Protect Marker counts as a Sentinel specifically?
protect marker is a sentinel.
Okay, then he's gonna save the protect marker for the Vanguard attack most likely here.
Yeah, in that case, I think you just have to pray that Mozrax doesn't see double crit on this dry check and put it all on the Chronojet.
Yeah, and right now Keiju did actually end up asking, hey, how many triggers did you see, buddy? And he's like, it's like 3 or 4. So OT can be out here, crit, double crit possibly. It's also a possibility. Maybe a heal trigger even
That's
is
a heal.
also fine.
That's a heal.
Heal is good for Mozrax. It buys him a turn against the Gastille.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing that we also keep in mind, Fixit's hand is low, so Gastille is probably going to be most likely the only real threat here.
So no crits from Mozrax. That's exactly what Spixis wants to see. It's only 1 damage coming from Vanguard. Defensive will definitely help him guard this Mystery Flare column.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw there that he chose not to protect Mark of the Vanguard, take a bit of a risk, but yeah, he might be okay here. Because that Chronojet column is only 2 damage. He can go to 5, make a board, Gastille goes off, and I think Mozrax might lose because he's only going to have 3 cards in hand dealing with the massive pressure from the Gastille. So he's going to take this rearguard column. How's he going to guard this Chronojet?
So he needs to think out how to guard this Chronojet, because not only the Chronojet is a threat, the Schlishma that he can that Dave can follow up with after this is also threatening.
True, because the Schlishma can combo off of the Chronojet, seeing this Chronojet is a grade 3. So that's probably what Fixis is saving his PG for. Maybe.
True. Yeah. The one last attack with the boost. So this then is just a 38k Chronojet with crit and with Sentinel Restrict. It's not impossible to guard. So yeah, he's actually going to G-guard here. He has... It looks like he's going to go into the new G-guard that minus his crit. He's just deciding which one. I mean, any of the DI's G-guards will guard this because DI's G-guards are really, really, really good. It's just a question of which one is he going to go for in the end. So that is going to be Drainage, I think is how I pronounce that.
Is that the one that gives a higher base power? Because I know that DI has access to one that does that.
Yeah, so if you have 8 or more cards in Soul, it gains 10k shield, which he definitely does. And then when placed, you can put a rearguard in with the Darkness ability into Soul to draw a card. And I don't think Spix is playing any rearguards with the Darkness ability, so it's not going to go off, but it's still not too bad. So he could have gone to the new one, which minuses crit onto your opponent's board, but I think he didn't need this because...
Ooh, Overtrigger coming down here.
To guard. That's good for Mozrax. He knows that he's not going to die to a random OT from the Gastille swing, but that's going to be the end of turn. Right. So something I would have seen here is that if Spixis had the guard potential, we know he had the heal guard in hand. He could have used the P Clan Collection G guard, the what's her name? The Nilzibis to guard. Oh, there's drag form. Yep. Is that going to add the assassin into Soul?
I think that's probably the main target here.
Yeah, so we'll see what that does. But yeah, like I said, what Spixis could have done is use the Nilzibis to guard the Mystery Flare column and then minus crit on the Chronojet column, so that wouldn't have been a threat. But here we see the assassin does go in. So remember, Gastille sets your opponent's Vanguard power to 1, and assassin is going to be an extra attack. The only benefit that Mozrax has is that the assassin, when it comes out, won't have the +1 crit from the Gastille, but it's still pretty terrifying. Oh, we see Spixis adds the Hope on Damp from Soul to hand. So he's got 20 Soul. So he's going to call that Hope on Damp. And I think Mozrax is going to be unable to guard this turn. Because Mozrax has, 3-4 cards in hand? And we know that there was only, 20k shield among them? 1 card from hand is going into damage face down because of Gastille. And all of these rearguard attacks will have crit.
It's going to be a very tough one to take care of here. So he'll probably need to hit... I think like a defensive heal, maybe an OT is a possibility. If he does get like a couple defensive draws, maybe he can get some extra shield going. But it's going to be a tough one. He has no intercept either. Shuts it off, but it doesn't really matter. It's tough. It's very tough here.
Also an important thing here is, if he doesn't call anything, Fixit has 3 cards in hand. That will go up to 5. So he can go into this stride as well for an extra attack on top of everything.
Yeah, he can go into 4 facts by discarding 5. Oh man, and he has the counter blast for it. So he's got counter blast 1 for the gas deal, counter blast 1 for the 4 facts. Oh, I'm not feeling good for Dave right now. Of course, Dave hasn't seen his OT yet. You know, the fat lady hasn't sung.
No, it's not over yet. There's still different angles that you can go with here. So for sure, he'll probably take one of his lowest shield cards and put it into the damage zone. If it's a PG or if it's something else, he just do that and just put it in damage when he can. So my question is to you guys: was it a possibility of Dave of just passing turn and putting on Salvaging Graveyards as an out? Just like passing turn, not dealing a damage, just passing a turn. Try to do as much as possible to get the Mystery Flare back into the deck with Karut. Was that a possibility?
Hard to say, because you're not forcing your opponent any value or any resource from their hand, and Castile is just gonna go active every single turn, and Fixit had the counterblast to even just activate it. So
no, I meant he was on 1 damage face down. He had no damage.
Oh, in the beginning of the turn. Depends.
Was that an angle?
I mean, if you're going to try and set up for the turn after, you would just swing with Schließbar without attacking with the rear guards and just set up for, you know, as Eric said, putting the Mystery Flare on the bottom of the deck. But then, as we saw, Spixis took that damage anyway, so it wouldn't have made a difference in the end, because you have to attack with Schließbar to get that set up. So it's, I think it was definitely a lose-lose situation.
Okay.
So we see here it's just counting triggers. So there's 7 triggers in the soul. I think there's 1 in the damage.
Are we seeing free crits in soul? Because that is needed for 4 effects, right?
I don't think 4 facts needs crits in the soul to go into. It just puts crits back.
Oh yeah, it's choose up to 3. Okay. It's not a mandatory cost of the card.
Yeah. But even then, like I said, you know, the front row already has crit from Gastile anyway, so this everything here is still pretty scary, even without the threat of drive check crits. So yeah, there's 1 in damage, 1 in drop, and I think 1 was in the soul. So there's still 1 crit left in the deck, and OT has been out, but it is still possible for Muzrax to just eat a bunch of damage here.
And I think we already saw 2 heals so far from KG. So if he heals, he gives Dave the possibility of being able to heal here himself. So it's also not over.
Yeah, Dave has a bunch of heals still in his deck. I think we've only seen 1 or 2 heals from Dave as well. 1 in the bind zone, 1 in the drop.
Also, an important thing here is that if he hits, he doesn't necessarily need to hit double he needs to hit over trigger. A double defensive can shut down quite a lot of attacks here, because those grid 3s, if I am correct, are just 13k base.
Yeah, correct. So yeah, 2 defensives will turn off those rear guards without any triggers from Stixis. But he has to take the risk here though, because this is the Vanguard swing with drive check. So this is 2 damage going in at 1. If Stixis checks a crit here, it's all over. First check, nothing. Second check, nothing. Okay, here we go. 2 damage, Dave. This is your chance. First check, nothing. Second check,
that's a crit.
Defensive. It's something.
But it's probably not enough here.
Yeah, because he's Hope on Damp is active. He has to use both cards in his hand to be able to reliably guard the rear guards. And we see here Spixis is going to discard 5. 3, drop the protect marker, 5, down comes the 4 facts. And he does have at least 1 crit in soul to put back.
So 1 crit goes back in because you can set up to 3. But sadly enough, there's only 1 in the soul, so that goes back into the deck. He's currently going to be shuffling. So all of the threat is still here. He also still has Assassin in soul, so he actually still has 2 more attacks after this, 3 more attacks after this one. So it's going to be a tough one. It's going to be tough for sure.
So I think if I'm in Spixis' position here, I would attack with one of the rear guards first to force Muzrax's 20k shield, which I think he's going to do, because he can then replace this rear guard with the assassin, and then hopefully drive check that last trigger in his deck to put the crit on the assassin for lethal. Because everything here is currently 2 damage, so Muzrax still has to hit either an OT or a heal on the last damage.
I think we're seeing a Hugh Guardian coming in. Oh, he's using the special Hugh Guardian. that could help him here, because I think this negates the guard restrictive hope on that, because it's not called from hand.
Correct. So, just remind everyone there, the reason he didn't have to discard heal for that is G-Zone, GB1, it can be called from face down by binding a grade 3 or higher rearguard. So he bound the Mystery Flare, which means that, again, he doesn't have any more Mystery Flares in the deck, so even if he survives this, it's going to be hard for him to win next turn, but it does at least guard this comfortably. And now, Sphinxus goes in with the Vanguard swing, Assassin comes out, drive checks either a crit onto the rearguard or a crit onto the Vanguard here. Muzrax has to hit the OT or a heal to survive.
So as what Eric was saying, he just basically needs to hit a double trigger. And I think the double trigger needed to be at least like one heal in between here for him to survive. I think he'll have to no guard to take this.
Hopefully it's not a crit for Dave. I mean,
Blank,
so far blank.
Ooh, there's the
it's a
crit!
crit!
Oh, all to Vanguard. That's 2 damage coming in from Muzrax. Is it a heal OT? It is not!
It's the
oh,
Renovate Wings.
no!
That signals the end for Mystery Flare Turbo for Dave, sadly, and Fixit takes it to the finals here.
Yeah, that was really unfortunate for Muzrax. As we said, he had all 4 copies of his Mystery Flare out of the deck. By turn 3, he was unable to just get to his combo. I mean, we saw that. He had the pieces to get to 19 bind. Like, he discarded the Reinnovate with the Steam Breath. So he actually could have reused that last Reinnovate to get to 19. He could have gotten there. It was just really unlucky that he didn't hit his he didn't have at least one Mystery left in the deck for his combo. But yeah, that was at the same time like really well played from Sphinxus. He saw that his opponent was on the back foot and he took all the right options to ensure that he stayed in control of that game.
Yeah, I wonder if the draw of the Mystery Flare is possible that it came from the Foos, because we saw at turn 1 that, hey, Foo is actually very beneficial for Dave because he can put it into his
cards,
soul.
yeah.
But it also draws you cards which can accidentally draw into your copies of Mystery Flare Dragon here.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like, even if you can put the right cards from hand into soul for Foo, you might end up drawing the wrong cards. Like, you might even just end up drawing triggers that you would like to have damaged. So no matter what people say, Foo is disruption, and disruption is good. But yeah, that's the end of the top 4, and I think we're about to. I think the other top 4 game just ended, so we're about to cut to the bracket here in just a moment. If you bear with us. There we go. So. Muzrax. I'm not sure if 10-0 is an accurate result there, but we did just see Muzrax unfortunately lose to Sphinxus in the top 4. So Sphinxus will be moving on to the finals, not Muzrax. But then on the other side of the bracket, we have Aya unfortunately losing to Nico. So Nico there with Shiroyuki going all the way. That is, again, it's a finals of NLK versus Shiroyuki. That is not a finals I expected to see.
I think it's been a while since I've ever seen DI in our finals in a very long time. So it's good seeing them back into form again. 4FX, since them losing Grade 4 Gastille, has been struggling a whole lot as an archetype. And it's good to see them find their bearings in finding a variant of the deck that allows them to kind of express themselves the same way as they did before. It's really cool. It's really cool.
One I'm personally most excited about is Shiroyuki in the finals. Like, who would have guessed? Who would have guessed that VGE-Premium, we have a finals, and it's gonna be Shiroyuki there fighting for the winning position here.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, it's also worth remembering that the tournament isn't over for Muzrax and Aya yet, because they both still have a 3rd and 4th place playoff. They're playing for that 1 copy of Ourogorum and a booster box. So even though they may have lost in top 4, they still have 1 more round to play. But for now, we are going to go to a quick break. So once again, here's the final fixed, correct, and updated bracket for you all. We'll be back. It's a short break for the finals. Don't go anywhere, and we'll see you all very soon. Take care in just a little bit. Welcome back, everyone. This is it. We are at the finals of the Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022 Europe Tournament. Gentlemen, it's been an exciting day so far, and I'm glad to experience this with you. Again, we have a finals of DI versus Murakumo, and a fourth playoff of Gears versus Dungaree. I cannot believe what we've seen here today.
It's been a wild weekend so far. Like, not only today, but yesterday we saw a lot of amazing card fights. We saw a lot of spicy decks, and decks that maybe a lot of players weren't really expecting at this tournament level. So a lot of exciting stuff, and this just coming from week 1. So I'm very excited for what we're going to see in the finals here, and what we're going to see in the next coming weeks.
Exactly. JJ, what's your take on everything we've seen so far?
It's been spicy.
But
in all seriousness, it's been a very exquisite weekend. It's been really cool to see everybody innovating new strategies, encompassing all of what Vanguard is about, taking your vision of victory and aspiring from start to finish to achieve that goal. Of course, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be a lot of rocky roads ahead of you, but as long as you keep on going that trajectory, keep on trying to get your winning image, you'll be like here, watching us or playing that yourselves, experiencing the intensity of playing against really good established players all over the world.
Well said, my friend. So before we jump into the bracket, I just want a quick shout out to Peter. So I missed this earlier, but he made a tweet on the BRO 2022 hashtag saying, which match should I use for the EU Premium Top 8? And he was choosing between the Token Ranbu playmat and the gold embroidered playmat from the Premium set. And let's be honest, both of those are pretty hot drip, and we saw on stream in the end he went with the gold embroidered playmat from the Premium supply set, which I think was the right choice. But yeah, people care about everything they can, presenting themselves on camera. This is their chance to show themselves off to the world, and I think he did so in a very good way, and he can definitely be proud of his top 8 performance. But for now, we are going to jump into the bracket one last time to remind ourselves of what we're about to be seeing. So in the finals, we have KG's Fix This playing NLK Barrow versus Nico playing Murakumo. And then in the fourth place playoff, we've got Muzrax on Gears versus Aya on Dungaree. Man, again, first of all, congratulations to all of these players for making it this far. It's no small feat having to do 2 days worth of events. And I believe I'm right in saying that Muzrax and Nico both also played in AO and/or NA, right?
I think Dave Muzrax didn't participate in NA, but did participate in AO.
Yeah, so these guys have been not quite running the full gauntlet, but they've got a lot of playtime under their belt over this weekend. So even more impressive that they've made it this far. But that's it. So just before we get into the game, we're going to take one last look at their deck lists for those of you who just want to have a quick reminder of what they're playing. So first off, we're looking at KG's Fix This' list. Again, we saw that Fugin Lin, I keep saying it's the best DI card ever printed, and time again, I've been proven correct. But yeah, the crit triggers there. So something that we didn't talk about the first time we looked at this list is that he's running a 2-2 split of draw PGs and Sentinel crits. And we saw at the very end there, that crit coming out, stopping Muzrax from being able to heal out of the Gastille turn. Man, that crit Sentinel is spicy.
Yeah, it's a nice addition for your list because it's basically a meta call that either you need your PGs to just block big numbers, or you just need big raw stats on your cards to just guard against certain instances. And adding the extra criticals can definitely help you to pressure the game early on, and we know that NOK wants to be very aggressive and wants to kill on turn 3, so extra crits can help with that. But it also is a nice synergy with the new Stride that also shuffles back crits to the deck.
Yeah, for sure. And again, as JJ pointed out, that Gastille definitely put in the work. It is oh man, dealing damage and crit and power is pretty good.
But he's not only playing alone, he's also playing his opponent, Nico. Personally, also getting into here, him being able to do so well in this tournament today. We'll take a look at the G-Zone real quick before we head over to talk about Nico. But I really do think that the G-Zone that we currently have for DI is just a whole bunch of toolboxing. There's a lot of G guards in here, 8 G guards in here. Probably not even going to go through most of these G units. For facts is your main win condition. Balam is a bit of a silver bullet, removing rear guards from your opponent, and you also have a capability of sending in triggers back into your deck. But it's just very good. It's just a very well established G zone right now that we do have set up for us. But without getting said, you've seen this all this weekend. You'll see this. You can do hashtag, top decks. So you can take a look at yourself. You can also do an exclamation mark bracket in the chat. And you can also take a look at the list yourself and see why it's so good. So without further ado, let's take a look at Nico's list of Shiryuki.
So moving on to Nico's list here, the one thing I was going to reiterate, like I mentioned before, is the dual weapon coming out clutch for Nico there. I mentioned before that a lot of people are like, maybe not playing dual weapon, or maybe they're cutting the Ju-On Chanter for the, just 10k bodies of D format. But here Nico's gone all in. He's like, nope, I just want a combo. The only D cards I care about are Over Trigger and the grade 1 stealth rogue that removes problem pieces from the board, like Honolly.
Yeah, and in the last game we also saw the value of John Chanter coming in clutch on the grade 2 gaming that just allows you to just cycle through your cards, draw more cards, set up your field. Like, it's an incredible turn to play, and I'm curious if we're going to see it in action in this finals game as well.
Yeah, for sure. One last thing I want to point attention to is one of his triggers. So notice that he's playing the Dart Spider there as his stand trigger. The effect of the Dart Spider is that it goes into Assault to countercharge, which is pretty good. The deck uses a fair bit of counterblast. Like, you're spending counterblast on 6 flowers, you're spending counterblast on Ju-On Chanter, your strides cost counterblast, and people try and damage deny you. So I get why he's playing that, but the stand trigger that I usually see seen more played is Stealth Dragon Hiden Scroll, which is GB1, clone one of your units twice by returning this to the deck. And there's a lot of good things to say about that card, right? It's a stand trigger that puts itself back into the deck, and if you have 6 flowers on the board and all the rest of your 6 flowers are still in the deck, it can search 6 flowers from the deck. But of course, it is GB1. As we've seen, Nico here is trying to play really fast, really aggressive. He's got the Ju-On Enchanters for early game pressure. He wants to be fighting for first stride. He wants to use dual weapon as his extender. So maybe he doesn't need to clone 6 flowers as aggressively, and it seems to be working for him so far.
Yeah, we see definitely a more focus on more aggressive gameplay here that just wants to win the game as fast as possible and maybe just use strides for the final push here, as we saw in the previous game where it just was the final nail in the coffin to just close the game. And also just the additional soul could come up to potentially use the effect of Shiryuki again in a turn. So overall, a pretty interesting tech that could definitely come up in the game that we're going to see in a moment here.
Yeah, I definitely respect the choice. So just before we jump into the game, let's finally take a look at Nico's G-Zone. So as we saw, the main thing here was the Izumo Ohime. So again, it allows you, enables your rear guards to attack from the back row. It clones 2 of your rear guards, so it's a straight +2 for just counterblast and flip. And yeah, it enables so much power. Like, the way that the deck used to play is that you would first stride the Shibaraku Victor, whose act was Soul Blast 1, flip, and basically add 2 cards to your hand, which is kind of what the Izumo does. It adds 2 cards from deck to rear guard. And then next turn, you'd have to stride the Ice Petal Shiryuki to enable your back row rear guard attacks. Whereas now, the new stride does both those things on 1 card. So you just stride the Izumo and you just go for it. And it just gives you every little thing you need. And you can still, the best thing about it is that you can still flip the Shibaraku Victor to use its G-Zone Soul Blast 1 call itself when you attack whiffs effect. So you still get the, you don't get the full double Victor attack loop. The combo is that if you have 2 Victors face up, the first one misses, you call the second one over it, the first one then goes back to the G-Zone, and then the second one now can attack, and then if that misses, the first one comes back. So it basically means that if you put this on 5 damage, every piece of soul you have is an attack, which is insane. So you lose access to that on the first stride, but you have more than enough lethality to make up for it in the other ways, which I think is very, very cool.
Yeah, and this is also where the stand trigger can come in for the extra soul to just set up this loop even further.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're pretty much ready to get into the game, so we'll jump straight into it, and we wish the best of luck to both players. Okay, so as we've mentioned, as we've seen, DI, go first, 20 soul, win the game, or at least, be in a position where it basically wins the game. What do you think? How do you think Shiryuki stacks up against this?
It'll come down to KG's, I love this, sportsman-like air
Virtual handshake,
handshake. But it comes down to what angles both of them want to approach this game plan from. So Nico does have the early game pressure, but if KG does have either it's set up with Gastille, if he wants to go that angle, or if he wants to try to go for a Hope on Dam NLK, it'll be very much based on how Nico approaches this from his own end. I think that's kind of the only way you can chalk this up to. It's going to be matchup knowledge, a bunch of experience, and if they can figure out how to outsmart each other, this is going to be a battle of wits right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as we've mentioned, DI wants to go first, ride grade 3 and win. Shiryuki wants to fight for first stride so that it can stride and win. So I see a world here where Nico's going first, but he might try to grade 2 game just so he can get the first stride and win on that turn. But there's still the danger of if he grade 2 games and Sphinxus rides up and just does his stuff, Nico might just lose right there and then on the spot.
Yeah. So I could see him just not, like, stalling or anything, maybe just taking a very aggressive grade 2 turn, and then just going directly into grade 3, because it gives him at least an extra power bonus if he needs it.
Sphinxus there with the turn 1 Fu, as we keep seeing, and I'm seeing a pattern here between turn 1 Fu and DI win rates.
Yeah, it's as if it's glued to these DI players' hands. I've not seen it miss so far.
Yeah, and the great thing is that, again, for Shiryuki, like we saw with MFD, he wants that soul. Like, all the Shiryuki's cost soul, all of his effects, like, he's trying to build as much soul as physically possible. So, the more soul, the better. Big Troll Trigger coming in for Nico defensively. Every single card he can find is great. And unlike with Mystery Flare, Nico doesn't need cards to stay in the deck, so this filtering and draw is much less disruptive for Nico than it was for Muzrax.
And we see also John Chanter coming down on the grade 2 turn, so this could be very good for him.
Yeah, if Nico wants the grade 2 game, this is exactly how he's going to do it. We'll see if he tries to commit here, because as we've discussed, the whole thing about NLK is that it needs damage to go off, and you need Counterblast 1 for the NLK, Counterblast 1 for the Baron Magnus, Counterblast 1 for this and that, if you want to use Variance Drag Form, if you want to use Poisonic Abductor or Emblem Master or what have you. So, if they have, sure, they have Countercharge in the form of Engraver, but if Nico just passes here, if he just passes twice in a row, KG Sphinxus won't be able to do anything.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard from, like, every DI player I've talked about, the matchup. Most of them are telling me, you should just turn end, just pass, don't give the damage on the second turn, because that shuts down a lot of Soldier's capability in the early game. So, it depends on what direction Nico favors here, that either he thinks the aggression is the way to go, or maybe he thinks stalling can help here to at least make the turn 2 cards less viable, as they are forced to call an Ablemancer or a Doctor to the field that doesn't activate.
Yeah, I could see Nico just rushing here because, again, he is going first. KG Sphinxus will ride his grade 2, and then Nico could just ride a Shiryuki, minus 10k your Vanguard, and just rush him down. And I think that's what he's going to go for here, yeah. So that's the G Creeper, so it's only 7k power versus versus Nico's 8k body. So he is going to be in a slightly advantageous position here in that it will hit, but Sphinxus is going to guard, which allows Nico to use the effects. Ooh.
But he chooses not to, though, because he just
Okay.
wants to keep the units on the board. Drives into a 6 petals there. That goes into his hand, so you could possibly use that for next turn. There is the grade 2 turn, so I could see KG here choosing to just pass, maybe. Or, like, attack a rear guard and pass, possibly. Maybe the Rainy Madame, probably sending it out to the drop zone, putting him on no CB that he could use for the 6 petals if that's his only grade 3. But I think earlier we did see him have a regular Shiryuki in his hand before, so let's see how they approach this.
Yeah, so we see here they are talking about the Lady Silhouetta. which is the other grade 2 that Nico has on the board. It's how he was able to clone his Rainy Madame. And it's also got the, when it doesn't hit, he can do things, which, can disrupt the Fu, which is not what KG's Fix This wants. So he ends up taking the damage and damages his Variance Drag form, which is, one of his consistency pieces, because he just doesn't want to lose that Fu, because that Fu is core to his engine.
So this means that Casey now loses the damage zone. He has no way to get the cards out of damage zone because that card just went to the damage zone here.
Yep,
Yeah,
the
for
Variance
sure.
Dragon. Yep.
So which means that if we see him damage the assassin like he did last game, he's suddenly really heavily defanged. But yeah, like we said, Nico there has just chosen to attack 3 times. He's going to go for the aggro. And KG did end up guarding a few of those. He used the quick shield on the Rainy Madame attack. I think he was even thinking about using Werewolf Ketzer to guard the Silhouette attack until he realized it has an on-miss effect. And yeah, he wanted to stay low on damage despite NLK theoretically scaling with damage. Fu is then going to shove in the Ketzer there. What is Nico going to see? Is he going to put in another Shiryuki? Or... Nope, he's going to put in, I think that's Murasame.
Yes, the new grade 1 from the previous Shiryuki support.
Right, Sasame Yuki, yeah. It's just got an on-place... It soul charges when your Shiryuki's placed, but when your opponent's giving you free soul with Fu, I guess you don't need that.
Yeah, because Nico also needs to be careful about deck out, because he soul charges himself a lot, and Casey also accelerates that. So you probably want to lose you don't mind losing a couple of cards that soul charge in the first place.
I feel him here attacking into a rearguard potentially.
Perhaps. I mean, Murukuma doesn't really rely on Counterblast that much. Maybe he just wants to remove the bodies from the board so he doesn't get rushed too hard, but... Again, like we were saying, right? Nico wants to... Theoretically, Nico wanted to damage deny Dark Irregular so he doesn't get NLK'd. And the problem I was going to mention is that the core of his combo plan, which is the Jokotsu Girl and the Rainy Madame, is that they have to attack and not hit in order to get their pluses off. But going first, they're always going to hit. So Nico's not going to be able to... If he's wants to get the pluses off of Jokotsu Girl and Rainy Madame, he's not going to be able to damage deny the opponent. So that's why he just committed the Silhouette. He saves a Rainy Madame in hand as well with the Silhouette. He's not going in too hard. And, for example, if that Silhouette was a Jokotsu Girl, 100% you attack the Jokotsu Girl to deny your opponent the pluses. But if it's a Silhouette, it's arguably less of an important piece, and maybe there was an argument for Fix This just bashing Nico in the face there. But Nico's, like we said, choosing to grade 2 game. He doesn't have counterpass for Ju Enchanter because Fix This attack the rearguard, which means that he just has to attack with Vanguard, do nothing else, and hope that Fix This rides grade 3 and doesn't win. And we'll see how that plays out for him. Sphinx is going to no guard. Stand comes in, doesn't do anything. And an Emblem Master goes to damage. So...
It is an interesting line of play coming from Nico, because we know Dark Irregulars doesn't really mind striding all too much. Their main gameplay is just being on grade 3. So is not giving them first stride that detrimental to your game plan? Because you are sitting at a higher base power.
You do turn off effects if you do this. So he is giving a nod to, I don't mind getting NLK'd for like a couple of attacks. I'm on 1 damage. I'm not really under much pressure. So if he also does have a heal guardian, he could possibly also reduce a whole lot of pressure that he's taking. He does, however, give KG a potential to set up here. And it could be pretty dangerous if he allows him to.
Yeah, if you, as in Nico's shoes, if you ride up and pass, you open yourself to being NLK Barrow 4-fax. Whereas in this case, because Nico's still on grade 2, Fix This cannot 4-fax, which is hugely relevant. He does soul charge the Gastille though. That is terrifying for Nico, I think.
Yes. But Nico's deck is a little bit different though. He can, as long as KG doesn't heal here, even with him being on Gastille as a potential, finisher, he can still probably close out the game if KG's not too careful. So he'll need to probably hit a heal here as an out and put himself on 2 damage or a lower amount, and he'll need to have a couple more sentinels if he can manage it.
Also, an important note is that because Shiryuki works the way that she does, unlike Musrex that was depending on hitting 2 defensive triggers, Nico can essentially force a defensive trigger with Shiryuki minusing 10k power on the attacks. So it's a pretty good defensive option against this particular game plan with Gastille.
Yeah, so we see there Spixis does have double engraver, so even if Nico had damage denied, just with 1 damage, Spixis could have done everything he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be huge. 10k swinging into 10. If Nico hits a defensive here, that'd be great because it can turn off the second engraver. And I think, is Spixis on soul? So Spixis is currently on 15 soul, so he has enough for NLK, but not enough to go into a gas steel or into a hope on damp.
That is if the engravers don't hit, because I think 1 engraver hitting gets you to the 20 soul here.
Yes,
yeah.
that is correct.
It does.
Because it's 3 from rear guards and then 1 from hand, so which is 4, so it goes to 19, and then plus 1 soul charge from the engraver, puts them on 20. Of course, Barrow Magnus does only need 15 for the full effect. So the fact that he has all his damage open and he still has a double engraver, I think tells me that he's looking to go into a big Barrow Magnus here. And the fact that he boosted with the Ketzer as well, you know, he's not saving the boost for anything else, he's just going to go straight into it, I think. It's going to be 5 attacks, but Nico does G Guardian here, heal Guardian here to be on a 19k base, which is very useful. Spixis chooses not to put the engraver in for the counter charge. He already has 2 open damage. He knows he can't extend too hard now that Nico's 19k base, so he's going to go for it, put the rear guards into soul, and maybe leave a rear guard on the board to put triggers onto, like that big heal. It's only a G heal, it's only 5k power, but he still doesn't hit the G-Enchanter yet. But yeah, by eating the other 3 rear guards for NLK, he can leave something on the board to give triggers to. Second check is no trigger. So again, that engraver will not hit, but this will. Nico takes the second, and it's not a trigger, it's another Lady Silhouetter.
So now he'll think how to approach this turn here. I think he'll be using the NLK, soul charging 3 of his rear guards because he needs to. Also a card from his own hand. He probably will not choose a Sentinel because he'll try to have farm as much of those as he possibly can.
Putting the crit sentinel in the soul, that's
It's a lot of
interesting.
shield, yeah. I don't know if he has an assassin in his soul or not. I don't think we've seen one.
I don't think we've seen it, no.
No, he doesn't have one.
Okay, so this is just going to be an engraver that doesn't do anything. Yep, it just end of battle, in-soul countercharge.
Mm-hmm.
And then this Barrow is going to be 23 with a crit, with 2 crits, and pulling out 2 moderately sized rear guards. So what can he pull out? Also, the Rainy Madame gets shoved into Nico's soul. Not that it's massively relevant, I think. Barrow coming out, this is 23k beat stick, you know, it asks for 5k shield. I can understand that. What else does he have?
I think he prioritized countercharging less here because he knows Nico is going to go on defensive next turn and he's going to take a couple of damage here. So I think he's just going to be pressuring. Or maybe just maximize on the countercharge here.
The engraver still hit. The engraver still hit. So
it is like 20 versus 19, yeah. So he's choosing not to call out a Barrow. He's only making 1 column, not 2 attacks. I think he just wants to get past that 19k shield. Or maybe not.
Like, Barrow gives the units 10k power, so any beat stick should do it here.
Yep, so he's going to call out the Emblem Master instead, who's a 14k base, now 24 because of the Barrow Magnus Power Pump, which is asking for 10k shield, which is at least a something. And Nico gives him a 2 to pass.
Ooh, this is pretty dangerous here, because if he hits an overtrigger, that could spell disaster.
That's a crit!
Check.
That's 3 damage! Because the Barrow Magnus has a crit on its own here.
Yeah.
Well, so if he goes crit to Vanguard, that's 4 damage.
Mm-hmm.
Because he gets a crit from the NLK as well.
So 1 trigger might do it here if he puts it on the Vanguard.
Yeah, do you feel lucky, Spixis? Are you going to end it all right here?
He has been selectively soul charging, so the chance of him hitting a trigger here is ridiculously high.
Oh, to Vanguard! Here we go!
Let's go. Let's see. Does he hit it?
Oh, he hits it! The heal does go off, so Nico has every single chance to heal here, but that's 4 damage coming in.
Yes.
Oh, Nico, what have you got for us? No
One
trigger,
hit,
no
one
trigger,
heal.
no
One
trigger.
Heal? One heal?
Oh,
No
no heals!
heal.
And it's all over! Oh, man. What a dice roll. That was not what we expected at all.
That is insane. Like right there, out of nowhere, just to the pass, and your opponent's like, "Oh, here's a crit. I'm gonna take the gamble. I'm gonna go all in."
That is absolutely incredible. I mean, you see there, Nico, calculating, taking his time, thinking, okay, I can do this, I can do that, holding onto his combo pieces. We saw it, like, he revealed his hand just at the end there. He had everything he needed. He had the stand, he had the grade 1, he had a Jikotsu girl, he had 2 copies of 6 flowers. If he had survived that turn, he was ready to go off and all in and just completely decimate Fix This. But, the light shined on our DI friend, so not so dark, and the triggers came through and he just was able to make it.
I think a lot came from it by the fact that he selectively soul charges a lot, like the emblem mass on turn 2, then the extra things that happened on turn 3 where he just soul charged a bunch of cards and hardly any triggers. So once he saw the first crit and he started to do a count, he probably realized there's a lot of triggers left in my deck.
Yeah, that's right. I would like to point out too as well, like, yeah, he probably did have the stand trigger. For me, I have a feeling like he probably should have just guarded here. Like, he could have. Like, even if he does hit like a double crit here, he doesn't lose, because then he could just guard the second attack because he's on the 19 base, and he could lose, like, he could stand to lose like 1 or 2 more cards, I feel.
Also, the rear guards are on their own just 5k guard, except the emblem, that's 10k guard, but it's not a lot of shield to guard, so...
It's easily guardable, but the problem is that if you guard like the Vanguard aggressively, you then open up the risk of him putting the triggers on the rear guard columns, and then they become a little bit harder to guard, right?
That's true, but like one of them only gets like 1 of the triggers, and even if you do split it, it becomes like 30 to 20, and it's still like enough, right? It's still like,
and it's still only
here.
2 damage. You still survive at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that maybe his hubris got the better of him. Maybe he thought like, I just want to keep these combo pieces and just immediately win the game next turn. Taking that little bit of a risk, but
yeah,
that's Vanguard for you, right? It's all about calculated risks.
Because a lot of people would probably just say off the bat, like, oh, he hit the double triggers, and that's probably just the only way he won. No, he could have guarded. He could have played around it like relatively efficiently if he wanted to. He had enough space to take enough damage if he wanted to. It just so happened that, sometimes we get bad at math.
Or what can also happen is that when you see all those combo pieces in hand, it's very tantalizing to just, I want to protect these cards. I don't want to use these. I can win with all of these. But then
you tunnel vision on your win con. Yeah, exactly.
Where you then forget, oh wait, it's a 2-player game. I also need to pay attention what my opponent is doing here.
Exactly. But outside of that, I feel that Nico did it really, really well to get to this far. Even as much as I like to be a very just focused in on the smaller minutiae of things, I really do feel that he did really well. Both of them did. Congratulations to KG and congratulations to Nico.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations to KG's Fix This, and congratulations to Nico for getting second. But again, he is a good player, and I think that second is very much well earned. He's had this result a long time coming. I think this is Nico's first major top, actually. So I think he could at least be proud of himself. Like, I've always said that Nico is a great player, and this is just him proving his mettle and just going through the chops again. My only comment is that, like we said in the game, there was an argument to damage denying the DI player because that he needs 2 counter blasts for the NLK into the Barrow, but at the same time, we saw that Fix This did have the double engraver in hand, so it ended up not mattering. But just these little like 1 or 2% chances can sometimes really add up. But for now, we're going to quickly cut to the final standings, the final bracket, and go through that with you guys before we go to the players' interview. So there you go. KG's Fix This is your champion. Nico with the 2nd place. I think the 3rd and 4th place match is still ongoing, so we will update for you. We will get that update to you as soon as we get it. But yeah, the rest of the bracket. So once again, congratulations to KG's Fix This. Commiserate, well done to Nico for getting 2nd. Same to Muzrax and Aya for getting 3rd and 3rd or 4th. And of course, commiserations and last well done to Suo, Raptors Levin, Kitten Pants, and Peter for making top 8 of their event. So we're going to cut to a very quick break for you all, and then we'll be back with KG's Fix This, our EU champion, for a short interview. Don't go anywhere, guys. Alright everyone, we are here with the winner's interview. We are here with your champion, Mr. KG Spictus. First of all, congratulations and well done on your win. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're feeling right now.
As for myself, I haven't been playing Vanguard for too long. I started with Overdress when it came out, and I have mostly been playing Overdress for locals. I haven't really been competitive. This was my first competitive tournament.
And also still being able to win it is also pretty impressive. So what's your local environment been like for you? What's been it like for you just being super new to Vanguard, starting in Overdress? What made you take the step to going to Premium?
It has been very fun all the way through. Our locals are full of friendly people. We have a great time together. And as for what made me go to Premium, I have some friends that have been playing since the game came out, and they got me into Premium.
I'm kind of curious. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That was it.
I'm kind of curious how, because you started with standard, so you have the nation system, but now with premium we go to clans. How did you end up with dark irregulars? What caught your eye with the clans specifically?
I couldn't decide which clan to enter with, so it was a last moment thing. I was thinking Nightmare Dolls or maybe Granblue, but I was like, I will go for DI, whatever, why not?
I mean,
it worked out in the end.
It worked
yeah.
out.
So you mentioned things like Grand Blue and Nightmare Dolls, which people have been saying is like, oh, these are like really high level meta decks, and
Yeah.
DI is also a pretty high level meta deck, but it's not as maybe not as an obvious like best choice as the others. Taking into account things like the most recent restriction list and premium collection, how else did you prep for the event? Like, what else went into your decision making process?
So I was really thinking Palemoon because one more of my favorite clans, but I know everyone is preparing for that deck, so I would get beat real easily probably. Then Granblue, I don't know how to play it very well, so I would probably deck out or something. So the eye works out better because I can kill my opponent when he's grade 2, and they don't have time to really react.
Well, as we saw as evidence against Nico, so hey,
Yeah.
those happens because you have a lot access to selective soul charging, a whole lot of pressure. What was your game plan going into that game against them? Was it just that as your game plan, or do you think, well, shoot, I saw some of his matches before, he looks kind of insane, I might want to probably take some time here to think about this?
So going against Nico, I knew he knows my deck very well because he plays the clan as well. And we got matched yesterday as well, but we ended up getting reshuffled and we didn't play. But I knew that he knew my deck very well. I didn't know his as well, but I knew I had to kill him very fast or I would lose instantly. So I tried my luck and it worked out. I had to go for the Vanguard when I checked the first figure.
Yeah, totally fair. So tell us about the rest of your tournament. Like, yesterday, your Swiss rounds, and like the rest of your top 8. Like, how have things gone for you? Like, any highlights you want to mention?
Honestly, it was a really fun event. All of my opponents were very polite, and we had a good time. Most of my matches were kinda like this, or half of them at least.
Just very fast to win on grade 3.
Yeah, especially if I go first. And I lost one game to Narukami because I had a kill turn ready, but I didn't have crits in soul, so I can have enough deck for the new stride, and I decked out myself.
Okay. Yeah, so even DI, like the quote-unquote pretty straightforward of just kill them, there's still a lot to play or to consider. That's interesting.
Yeah, sometimes you see the creepers and you're like, yeah, I wanna charge more. It's kind of addicting.
I get that.
Yeah, but you gotta know when to stop.
What is a good threshold for you? What have you learned so far in this whole tournament that it's been a good threshold for you to be like, okay, I have enough. It's okay. I don't need to do anymore.
You kinda need 20 to 22 or 3, so you can borrow Magnus, take out the hope on dump from your soul, and your opponent can't easily guard anymore, so you probably win the game at that point. Either that or go for Gastil. No one expected Gastil, and it won me probably half of my games.
Yeah, like we saw in top 4, it was
Yeah,
straight up just, oh, I didn't see this coming. Yeah.
he steals games.
Also, seeing as this is your first big event that you said earlier today, well, usually when you enter these big events, there's like a lot of learning experience and you take a lot of away from this. What did you personally take away from this as your first big event moving forward?
I don't really know. Probably that I will try more events.
That's a good sign.
Yeah.
All right, well,
I
that's
don't know, man,
great.
it was fun.
Yeah,
That's what I can say.
definitely.
I
Hopefully
take that
it's,
away from it.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway. Hopefully we'll see you at the BCS season coming up later this year.
Or maybe
So-
other formats.
Yeah, maybe in the upcoming BROs for V and Standard. You say the Standard's your game, hopefully maybe
I
you can do a
think
repeat.
I will enter standard, probably.
There we go. We'll look forward to seeing you there. All right, Spixers. Anything else you want to say to the people at home, or any shout-outs you want to give? Anything you want to? You have a few seconds of red carpet for the stream for you here.
Sure. I will of course shout out my friends here where we play together, and my brother for getting me into the game. And yeah, that's it. Thanks to them.
All right. So once again, congratulations on your win. I'm sure you'll
Thank you.
enjoy those 4 promos and that box and that certificate. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, a round of applause for your champion, KG Spictus.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we're going to cut back real quick to take one last final look at the brackets, and then we will start wrapping up. So, as you can see here, once again, congratulations to KG Spectus for his win, Nico on 2nd place, Muzrax and I on a 3rd, 4th. Let me just check for an update if there's a result there or not. But again, Suo, Rapsus11, Hidden Pants, and Peter making it through to Top Cut. Again, this has just been a super cool top 8 to see. Like, there's such a wide variety of decks and clans being played, and just to see, like, things like Premium Collection, my apologies, Premium Collection making such a huge impact on the game. It's just, people were saying that up until now, like, even with Order Coin and Nightmare Dolls, that this premium, the previous premium format was one of the better ones. I think this one going forward, now that we've proven that Nightmare Dolls is, not unbeatable, because now all the new decks are just as strong, and that even though Mega Colony Gridora might still be a problem card, it is potentially more manageable now because everything else has become stronger to compensate. I think this current premium format is just as exciting, if not more.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. What we've seen today and what we most likely going to see in the next coming months moving forward.
And as a small bracket update, Mutrax actually ended up winning his own game, so he ends up being in 3rd place. So congratulations to him.
There we go. Dave Vecht pulls off yet another medal to his collection. So congratulations to Muzrak on his 3rd place, and commiserations to Aya on 4th place. But that is going to be the end of it for now. So before we leave you off, just a few comments from us. Again, it's been a lot of fun commentating with my friends Eric and JJ. The tournament has been super great to watch. I couldn't have asked for a better start to the BRO season. And you know what? I'm gonna end it with a bombshell. I'm gonna come outright and say it. I'm glad there was no NMD in the top cut. I'm tired of saying the words Dark Side into Yvette into 27k Leslie. If every event from now on could be like this, I would be a very happy person.
Playing the deck myself, I can 100% agree with that statement.
I mean, what about Silverthorns though? I mean, I'm saying.
I'm totally. If I can see Luquia on my screen, I'm happy for that as well.
If somebody can make Silverthorn meta, I will be all for that.
Okay.
Yeah, one last announcement for everyone to know. We're just gonna go one last time to let you know the schedule of the upcoming BRO season. As great as this event was, it's just the first of many. We still have 3 more great tournaments for you over the coming weeks. So this week has been premium, and like we said, if you take a look at the schedule, next weekend on the 30th of July, the 31st of July, we have the V Premium event. which is going to be, just as good. There's been a few adjustments to that metagame as well, with the new product releases and people learning how to play around certain decks. Of course, Prism has been finally put to rest, so we'll see what comes up to take its place. And then we have a bit of a week, 2-week gap while the players and the TO staff catch their breaths. JJ, Eric, and I can sort of recover our voices from today. But we'll be back in August with Standard. As we say, we'll be seeing our champion, KG there. He's going to be playing his favorite format on the 13th and the 14th of August. There's loads of exciting prizes there as well. Again, new product releases, everything to play for, a brand new landscape for the Standard format. I can't wait to see that. And last but not least, on the third week of August, we have Weiss Schwarz on the 20th and the 21st. Again, a few massive product releases for Weiss coming out this year. I'm also looking forward to seeing that as well. So hopefully I will see as many of you watching there for the next coming weeks as much as possible. If not, there will also be BCS later this year, the in-person singles tournament circuit with a potential invite to Worlds on the line. But for now, sorry, man, you can tell that this weekend
he's losing his voice.
Yeah,
it's going. But also don't forget, for all the sub challenges, we're also getting underway. So you guys have been so great.
Honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better start of the whole event. Like this weekend has been insane. 2 amazing days, amazing card fights, amazing matches we've seen so far. And if this is the start of week 1, I cannot wait for week 2, 3, and 4 moving forward here.
Could not have said it better myself. Guys, thank you very much for casting this event with me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Shout out again to the production crew at Elephant. And of course, thank you to Bushiroad for running this event for our behalf on the players. And of course, don't forget, if you still don't have enough premium action, the NA Top Cut starts in just a few hours. So don't go anywhere. We'll be showing you that very soon. Come back into the Bushiroad NA LA channel on Twitch to view that in just a few hours. But for now, that's going to be it from us from Europe. We'll see you all next week for V-Premium. Have a lovely rest of your day.